How to Write This Book by Kyle Heath. Preface to the audiobook. A part of me wants to outright reject an audiobook version of How to Write This Book. If you see the physical book, you may see why. I tried to say things in a way only a book can, in a way where only extracting the insights will not extract out the essence. You know how people stick their ass on a photocopier? To me, I wonder if this audiobook is a photocopy of my ass, and the book is my ass. But here we are. You're listening to an audiobook. Me reading a book. This is mostly due to my vanity. I've always loved getting to read aloud in front of the class. But also, I wonder if this audiobook can become its own thing in some way. Normally, an audiobook is totally beholden to the canon of the physical book. Maybe by flying free of the book and screwing around, this audiobook can be an original piece of art too. The only chance for that is if I treat the original canon with irreverence. Since that's what How to Write This Book is about, we have a fighting chance that this audiobook can come alive. So, let's do this shit. Audio author's note. The written version of this book is composed of short snippets, forming a jeweled mosaic of themes. Each snippet is separated by a squiggly line. Rather than say squiggly line after each section, I will use the magic of audio and place an audio divider. I have here my toothbrush, which I will use to whack my toothbrush holder to indicate where these shiny mosaics of texts meet. And one more note before we slap this horse's butt and start the race. If you like this audiobook and you want an entirely weirder experience, you can buy the physical version of this book. There's a link for it down in the description. Also, if you would like to support me doing stuff like this, I have a Patreon account where you can patronize me. I've got a link for that down in the description as well. So, without further ado, here is How to Write This Book. Beforeword. Reading a book is straightforward. Literally. You start at page 1, and you drive to the right until you reach the end of the read. But my experience as the author is different. You're beginning here, but this is the last thing I wrote. To me, books aren't a straight line, but a circle. Or a spiral. Or one of my toddler's scribble scrabbles. If I knew what this book was going to be about when I started, I could have started with the foreword, and we could have walked together down a trail of well-manicured ideas. I could be your tour guide on this little destination journey, pointing out all the attractions, and then selling you a bumper sticker and some postcards at the end as a souvenir. Whenever you do creation, to some extent you are venturing into the unknown. I've done my best to lean into this as deeply as my courage allows. To write this book like a guy that didn't know anything, who didn't have a plan, who doesn't have a point. This book, pointless as a sunset. In this book, I want to explore the world before it had points. Thankfully, that is always an option. Even in this measured up, ruled up, gridded up world, all the same primal glowing wonder is here. Just like when we didn't know jack squat. To be honest at the outset, this is not a useful book. It's not sensible, coherent. It's meaningless as a painting. We can appreciate the beauty of a painting without reducing the experience to a meaning. But that's harder to do with words. Words are magnetic, enthralling, distracting as a New York 10 out of 10. Hubba hubba. Words and meanings are like water and wet. And here I am trying to separate them. Words, ideas, and thoughts, or you could call it wit, are really lovely. Almost too lovely. They're so lovely that our ideas often become the whole lens through which we see the world. They become a mask covering the immediacy of real experience. Living inside our head is like trading your wife for an anime waifu. It's like eating Polaroid photos of baby back ribs. Sure, it's cleaner, but something is missing. But we have worn glasses so long we don't even notice that this is pretty much everyone's condition. I want to somehow get beyond ideas in this book into something real. Reading travelogues won't give you sunburns or tick bites. Reading the Bible won't give you God. Or at least that's a matter between you and God. It's not travel if you don't get mud on your Nikes. And much of our culture's weariness is due to this disconnection. This ideology world we're stuck in. When I write a book in a decade, maybe I will be able to create a dumb piece of word art, a painting with words, where the fancy ideas yield space for the glow of reality to seep through, where even the shapes of letters are not glossed over unnoticed, but play their part. This book, Useless as a Dance. I've spent so much of my life using everything until I'm all used up. I hunger for a precious life where not everything needs a takeaway, an application, a purpose. So, this is not a useful book. I can't teach you how to beat up burnout, or clothesline your creativity, or punch your soul in the balls. I can't help you become the alpha artist you were always meant to be, if only your lazy body would comply. But don't worry. There are plenty of YouTube therapists that will take your money and invent all the infirmities that are getting between you and crushing it. There's an author named G.K. Chesterton, and his best book was one he didn't write. He had the idea to set a person on a sea voyage to discover a new world. The voyager landed at this unexplored place and discovered unimaginable wonders. But then he realized that all along he had just been exploring jolly old England, his own country. We tend to rely on knowledge, but if we forget our knowledge and experience the world directly, the way we did as kids when we didn't know shit, the world becomes vivid again. It turns out it is not the world that has dried up, but we have dried up. Because at some point we moved house, deciding that ideas were a better place to live than reality. Like the dumb sea voyager in G.K. Chesterton's non-book, I want to rediscover for myself what is already obvious to everybody. This book is unoriginal as the 10,000th dandelion to sprout up in my backyard. So, here I am, done with this book. I still don't know what the hell it is. But I'm darn grateful that I could write it, and I'm grateful to you for reading it. In my aimless rambling, I hope you can feel something of the stillness I enjoyed while making this nonsense. More priceless than anything I can think of. I understand this book is a little inconvenient to read and parse through. I often leave it to the reader to digest, where most idea books spit it out onto the plate pre-chewed. Yum. This inconvenience, I've found, can be reframed into a chance for self-discovery, where in taking responsibility for your own learning, you can develop a sense of self-authority. It's downright entrepreneurial, and it makes the entire world your teacher. Not many truths have influenced me more than this: that nobody can teach me anything, that understanding is up to me. Let him become a fool, that he may become wise. 1 Corinthians, whatever. Chapter 1. Begin. I'm sitting here with my notes app open, prepared to do the simplest task in the world. Poke my finger on some letter buttons. Even a monkey could do it. This is the beginning of a book. It's ready to pop into existence, and all I have to do is type. So why the hell is this moment so hard? I feel like Sasquatch is squashing my shoulders. A giant invisible weight clams me down, cows my fingers into inactivity, bears me away. But where are the threats? Why is my heart drumming to Metallica in this peaceful room, while just outside my window, little sparrows flirt on the crepe myrtle? There are no guns drawn, no critics wound back with a haymaker punch. This task of letter pushing has literally no stakes, but my brain is pumping war hormones. No one can tell me how to write this book. My brain musters this thumb-stopping argument. I have no clue how to write this book. In fact, I've never even done it before. I should at least take an online course on the subject before I spend the day writing something useless like an idiot. But there's no course for how to write this book. Nobody else knows how to do it either. There's a Turkish bazaar full of YouTube teachers lining up to tell me how to write a book. But what does that have to do with me? All their dutiful students are all writing the same exact book, their teacher's book. If I learned how to write a book, I could absolutely never learn how to write this book. That's because this book has never been written. Its identity swims in a proto-world made of star jelly. It cannot come to life with any words that have ever been used. I must make a new word if it's going to live as paper and ink. I feel uncertain at the beginning, middle, and end. Normally, structure would shield my doubts, but since I'm writing in the dark, all my doubts are just dancing circles around me. If I write ungoverned by best practices, there's no certainty that my book will be coherent, useful, approachable, or make me any money. My time spent could be completely useless. And for that matter, since I don't know what I'm writing, I'll probably write for 3 months and then come up with a totally better idea that will render all my previous writing worthless. Then what will Stephen King think of me? A river of reasons not to begin. If I keep waiting to figure out how to write this book, I'll never write it. So I'll learn how to write it by writing it. I will just start. By the end of this book, I will be the world's greatest authority on the subject. Fuck around and find out. Barack Obama sits back in his tawny leather chair and takes a long drag of weed. Then he says to his friend, baseball all-star Alfred Pujols, The thing I admire about Mario is he just keeps whacking those question mark boxes. Some of them have coins, some of them have fire flowers, some of them have poison mushrooms that will kill him. He don't care. He's still gonna fuck around and find out. Mario really lives. We don't really live, because we are fixated on the potential poison mushrooms behind those question mark boxes in our life. We'd rather not die than actually see what's behind the box. But Mario don't care about dying. He's too busy living. And guess what? You are controlling Mario. So when you're playing the game, you're practicing living for once in your life. So just do the same thing when you're off the screen, and you'll live like that jumping maniac too. My childhood friend Trover was a maniac. I don't know how the hell he's still alive. He was the hyper-Mexican kid embodiment of hold my beer. When we were 5 and playing Legos in the upstairs game room, he looked at me like a crackhead and said, "Hey, cow, watch this." He hopped up, climbed the overlook that looked over the downstairs living room, and jumped off the balcony. His mom lost her mind. "Trover, what is wrong with you?" This dude is still alive and making music videos in LA. But I'm sitting here worrying about the repercussions of not writing a book right. Just start. There are 10,000 reasons to delay your project for preparation's sake. After all, there's always more to optimize. There's always another digital painting Procreate brush to download. And let me tell you from my fully stocked larder of experience, that is way easier than making another crappy painting. Optimization is focusing on our weaknesses. I want to write well, so I'll take a class on not writing badly. As soon as I'm not bad in all these ways, what will remain is me being good, right? It's logical. But the model doesn't work in practice. It's like whack-a-mole. It's like driving your car in reverse. By the end, you will be a master. A master of packing your luggage for a trip you never took. Percy the expert. Percy was tired of getting sand kicked in his face by the beach bullies. He was going to get the muscle building guide from the back of his Boy's Life magazine and get diesel. Then it would be his turn to kick sand in little guys' faces. He sent a shiny nickel to Presto Muscle International, and after 3 months, he received his guide. He leafed devotedly through the pages, memorizing every routine. He became an encyclopedia of exercises. One fall evening, while he was reading his booklet, an ad on the television set caught his attention. It was the ultimate full-body training machine, the Bowflux. Other equipment only trains your lats or your spats, but the Bowflux will make you a monster everywhere. Don't settle for the rest, coward. Get the best. Percy immediately dialed the toll-free number, and for 50 easy payments of $20, the Bowflux was his. He spent the waiting time reading up on best practices for each Bowflux exercise to optimize his future muscle-building power. One winter afternoon, as he was sitting on his unopened Bowflux bench reading weightlifting forums on his iPhone, he found the most informative post he'd ever seen. This information was what he needed to really get jacked and kick sand in nerds' faces next summer. It was a roiling debate between fans of all the different strength training methods. CrossFit cultists lambasted Tybo tryhards. who sneered at Zumba zealots, who lorded over Mark Ripito meatheads, who thrashed starting strength stooges. Each one declaimed the danger and folly of following a different school's guidelines on form, diet, and routine. Now Percy really knew how to think like a weightlifter. He was one of them. One spring morning, Percy sat at the breakfast table, demolishing the argument of some weightlifting noob on the forum. His mother, placing his balanced breakfast on the table, asked him poodle-skirtedly, "Are you winning the argument, son?" "Yes, mother. This jackanape doesn't even know how to breathe during a squat." His mother smiled and glanced over at the dust doggy-piled on Percy's bowflex. "So do you think you'll do some squats today?" "Yeah, maybe," said Percy absent-mindedly. "I need to get some goat milk protein at the vitamin shop first. And then there's the Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding Bible study at the library. But maybe after that." Summer rolled around, and Percy was a brand new man. As he laid skinnily on his towel, he noticed Bruiser, the local bully, sauntering towards him. "Hey, Percy, how'd you like a little snack of sand in your face?" Percy looked him up and down, witheringly. "Oh, hi, Bruiser. Just a word of advice. Maybe don't skip leg day so much. And by the way, that's some really yummy-looking KFC on your towel over there. How's that working for your cut?" Bruiser, who was very sensitive about his quad development and was not having a successful cutting phase, was immediately cowed. He asked Percy for tips on his deadlift and promised to see him next Saturday at the bodybuilding Bible study. What most people need to achieve their dreams is to just keep going, to get their juices flowing. What most people do is never move, but become experts of knowing why they aren't going. Vapors. We are afraid of the repercussions of creating something foolish. People will cringe when they see my amateurish drawing. I will lose my friends and family when they read the crazy ideas in my book. So we're guarded and slow drip our self-expression so these situations will never happen. Guess what? You have nothing to worry about. These situations will already never happen. Nobody cares about what you say or do. They're busy freaking out about their own safety all day long. Your toddler scribbles out amateurish drawings, and nobody bans her from the Society of Oil Painters. Connie at the office preaches about crop circles and crystals, and still gets invited to lunch. Every Thanksgiving, your Uncle Lou educates the family on politics. Or worse, when after 3 spirits he gets spiritual. And he's still coming over next year. There's no stakes. Your fear alarm is tuned to signal your impending death at every house creak. But serial killers have much better things to do than raid your house. They're busy, okay? They're not like Santa Claus. These alarm bells, telling you to ride the brakes, will never be satisfied until the world is no longer uncertain. Preparation quickly becomes eternal delay. You're not going to war, Kyle. You're painting some flowers. All these undefined stakes are holding up the start of the roller coaster ride. And my tendency is to psychoanalyze and mince up every single one of them until all my concerns are addressed. I could fund a psychologist's entire career weeding out every one of my creative blocks, traumas, narratives my mother fed into my impressionable brain. The one thing I can't seem to do is treat all of these cautionary signals as irrelevant. I think Zeus that I have an inbuilt system that reminds me I'm close to a cliff, but art isn't a cliff. It's just uncertain. But what if my book is critically tarred and feathered? What if I'm run out of town for heresy? What if people say it's boring? What if they call me sloppy? Or the worst cuss word, lazy? What if my creativity never gets me that beach house? I still made art. By irrelevance, I'm going to write how to write this book. 10,000 kinks in the creative hose. They have different faces: money, time, embarrassment, caution, but they only have one name: important. In this book, I shall not honor them with attention, because fixation would be treating them as important. Instead, I will artfully treat them as an irrelevance. What could money or any other kink have to do with creativity? I'm scrawling letters on digital paper. Everything else is a distraction. Wasps build their nests under cover. They meander the sun skies without concern and spend rainy days at home carelessly. They never logicked the circumstances of their survival. Write into a better second book. To quote the prophet Miss Rachel from a YouTube sing-along channel for toddlers, "It doesn't have to be perfect. It's wonderful because you made it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes." I've watched a lot of toddler sing-along videos. Because in the end, who cares if this book is imperfect? I'm not performing spine surgery over here. I'm typing on my iPhone, and in a couple months I'll sell it as a book on Amazon. Art thrives in carelessness, so I will care less and less and less. My toddler has never colored a good drawing while she was worrying about the bills. Turd polishing. Even if this book is a piece of crap, I'll know how to write this book. And the next one. And the next one will start to show some weird mastery as I polish a turd repeatedly to a mirror-like shine. I'll find my way in mazy error. Maybe my turds will be used for scat shooting or weird decorative urns. And one day, shit mirrors. So, let's begin. Please turn to page 1. Chapter 2. Relax. Optimal poop. I have a weird goal for this book. I want it to be the laziest book in the entire world. I want to see if I can write it without any effort at all. Is it possible for this book to come out of absolutely no hustle? Because usually I'm always shoving myself along with some kind of hustle. And frankly, I'm really tired. Like soul tired. I'm what you'd call an entrepreneurial guy, which is another way of saying I'm bad at doing nothing. I've Protestantly work ethiced every area of my life. I can't even poop without wanting to optimize. I'll say this about overactivity: it helps you get a lot done. In recent years, I've built an online jewelry business. I've learned languages. I've accomplished all kinds of weird diet and exercise shit. I learned painting, went semi-pro. I built a YouTube channel. All through not relaxing. Woohoo! I'm living the Gary V dream. I'm growing things. It's what all the YouTube success prophets are preaching. Just work, you lazy schlub. The reason you don't have the life of your dreams is because your evenings are a marathon of Instagram doom scrolling and Ben & Jerry's Tonight Dough. Do some work. It's a lifestyle of growth and progress. What could be wrong with that? The carrot conspiracy. We are used to thinking of coercion as coming from a stick rather than a carrot. If someone were actually whacking me, punishing me if I didn't hustle, I'd notice that. But my hustle is fueled entirely by encouragement and positivity. I want to make a better life for myself. I want to heal and grow. I want to achieve financial freedom. I want motivation to do something new. There's no stick whacking me. It's all carrots. Cloyingly sweet spiritual carrots all the way down. I can do more. I can push harder. I believe in myself. I can rise beyond my limits and do this 60-hour work week. I'm self-actualizing myself to death. All in the name of our culture's God, the shadow puppeteer, whose name is GAC. G-A-A-C, which stands for growth at all costs. Our culture's God, GAC, is the counterfeit of true, fertile creativity. GAC desires usefulness, and so he instrumentalizes our creativity. For GAC's sake, we extract our own life source. We use ourselves till we're all used up. Like short-sighted farmers, year after year we reap and sow one crop from our field: usefulness. Inevitably, one year, the field is completely empty of nutrition, which for us means burnout. But GAC, the demiurge, still urges us forward. It's all about motivation, which means movement. We auto-motivate our dying vehicle with motivational speakers, inspirational self-help books, fix-it gurus, and most importantly, the most deeply held religious belief of every follower of the God GAC. You don't want to be a bad word, do you? Like lazy? Like useless? Aimless? Or worthless? I've got to do something useful. You could say the essence of cancer is growth at all costs. Are you a worthless loser? Can't get stuff done? Then try Brograins. Brograins has all the additives to help you do more. Record more YouTube content with our piracetam pills. They're like cocaine, but without the legal complications. Fine-tune your email funnel all day with the power of our vitamin B12 enema funnel. Ideate the shit out of your synergy brainstorms with our lab-tested mushroom microdoses. Get more babes and respect with our high-purity caffeine pre-workout mix, a morning confidence blast that'll launch you right into the land of the Ultra Chads. What are you waiting for, coward? An ode to not growing. Say it with one voice. Growth at all costs. Achieve, hustle, actualize, succeed. Our God, Cancer, proclaims through his internet prophets, slap that lazy ass and metastasize yourself. Instead, I'll burn up my time like a paper furnace, not deferring the wealth of my life, but pulling the virtue out of this activated cigarette. Doing things backwards is the hot new trend among the loomers. According to legend, it started with a middle schooler who didn't like waiting in the lunch line, so he got dessert first in the main course later. And so, this mythical contrarian incepted a whole way of life. We all noticed the superficial etiquettes of the loomers, wearing clothes backwards, walking backwards, driving their cars in reverse. But the fascinating feature is their rock-solid self-discipline. As a practice, the loomers live totally at odds with their wishes, so that one day they can do what they wish. They commit to careers they don't like, so they can make enough money to quit and decide what they want to do with their life. In the gym, skinny loomers grind to get fat, and fat loomers grind to get skinny. If they're hungry, they don't eat. If they're tired, they work. If they hate something, they pursue it. Ruthlessly targeting their disadvantages, they move forward by a magnetic repulsion. A grand ideal fuels the marvelous, capable loomer, that they can annihilate everything they hate about the world, and that what remains will be heaven. The loomer's boundless energy has reinvigorated capitalism, which now produces boundless products promising to weed out hateful things. This car is a lemon. My growth lifestyle worked until it didn't. I feel like a Ford Focus. When I was a new car, I could abuse myself, turning donuts in the Waffle House parking lot and overlooking oil changes. But after a while, the machinery got iffy. Hello, Burnout, my old friend. He came a-calling more and more often. My poor little body's resilience drained under the never-ending schemes of my brain. What the hell, body? Don't you know we're doing God's work over here? For a while, I could turn to YouTube motivational speakers to squeeze out more productivity. As long as I had another puff of enthusiasm or another whiplash of guilt, why are you so lazy? I could get this poor, grinding Ford Focus to carry me another mile towards the promised land. Wealth, changing the world, free time to find out what I want to do with my life. But inevitably, my body would fail my mind again. My body's like the freaking giving tree. I'm starting to suspect this may not be the healthiest relationship. I needed to find out how to get better. I had to continue my productivity glut. All the stuff they say to do to fix things, good diet, exercise, sleep, didn't fix anything. It was more like if I didn't have those on lock, I'd be as unresilient as a Mormon Jell-O salad. A funny thing about falling into this burnout cycle, time off didn't really do much. I had become a battery that maxed out at a 5% charge. I could plug in and recharge for as long as I wanted, but a few days intense work would take me back to Burn Town. I didn't know much about energy, but I knew my energy was all messed up. I searched Google for fixes, like a mechanic, like a junkie. I've been looking for fixes for my brokenness when my brokenness is from my fixes. No wonder the world is so overpopulated with therapists, healers, and motivators. Sharks smell blood from a mile away. A healthy machine. Burnout is like a muscle stuck in the clenched position. A healthy muscle is designed to clench and release, and to glide skillfully between these two states. Burnout is being always on and being stuck in a pattern. Have you ever had pain from working at a computer too long? Burnout's like that. You've been hunched over and typing for 8 hours, just like yesterday, like last year, like last decade. And at some point, your forearms or your neck or your wrist just breaks. And you can't just muscle through it anymore. Doing computer work is now torture. At some point, from your repetitive, overly specific, sustained posture, your body got sick. Burnout's the same thing, dude. The essence of healing is returning an object to the full spectrum of its capacity. Your body is designed for work, and it's designed for not work too. A horse is refreshed, not only by laying in a field, but by running through it. So eyes can see up close, but they also need to see far away or they'll get sick. It's like crop rotation. It's like a fallow field. But many of us are fixated on usefulness, so we use ourselves till we're all used up. Useless time. The spark that sporked, which gave me life again, was realizing that not a single moment of my life was useless anymore. I went to school and acquired skills to make the most of my potential and become a useful member of society. I went to church and therapy to grow, improve, and self-actualize. And the system, man, now extracts as much utility out of my precious creativity as I'm willing to give. And I habitually give till I'm sick. Even my relaxation somehow needs to be useful. Days off for me are the opportunity for the studious healing, growing, and learning that I can't do on work days. Rest must have a reason, same as work. And so, at least to me, anything useless now feels morally wrong, like a guilty pleasure or something. Go ahead and indulge. We won't tell anybody. Wink. I do not waste a moment of my relaxation. We lose our soul in this dehumanizing perspective, as well as our means for nourishment. What I've said above is the reason for burnout. It's why your battery capacity keeps shrinking, your creativity is a trickle, and why your body can't keep up with your aspirations. You're like a cramped muscle. You're like a light that's always on. There are plenty of things that are only accessible through uselessness. I already mentioned relaxation. Some of the other victims are play, unexpected discovery, trivial hobbies, noticing, and intimacy. The reason is, as long as what you do needs to be useful, you're trying to get something out of your activity. In a personal relationship, that's called objectification. Why do I hate uselessness so much? Why do I hate the idea of being lazy? That's a real can of worms. But the most pertinent thing is uselessness and laziness is kind of boring, kind of painfully boring. Addiction is a habit fueled by strong carrots and sticks. And for us burnouts, it goes like this. Carrot, stimulation, excitement, smartphone. Stick, boredom, uncertainty, my life problems looking right at me in the eye. One way or another, the only way through an addiction is detox. We are all addicted to usefulness. The fits like a glove cure is uselessness. It will be uncomfortable until it isn't, and then a whole unimaginably full life rushes back in. Sandra's brain and Sandra's brainless body had been in a relationship for a long time. It started off so exciting, so full of newness. But as time went on, Sandra's brainless body started to feel like the relationship was all give and take. One day, when Sandra's brain was occupied and Sandra's brainless body had some free time, she invited her friend Tracy's brainless body to coffee at Starbucks. "I don't know, Tracy's brainless body," said SBB. "I guess I just feel like she's using me." "But you're a brainless body," said TBB. "Isn't that your whole purpose? To be used?" "If that's the way it's supposed to be," said SBB, "then why am I so broken down? And why are Sandra's brain and I so disconnected from each other?" They spent the rest of the hour together, mindlessly sipping coffee. A Way Out. This book is my way out of this mess. My adult life has been framed by usefulness. What if I do something completely useless? I'm a broken down machine that can't produce by effort anymore. So, what could I make by effortlessness? That's this dumb, lazy book right here. If you're reading it, then I somehow published a book by mucking around on my iPhone. I want to paint the way a cat basks in sunlight, how a tree's branches submit to the wind. I put so much study into how to be unstudied, so much contriving for naturalness. While my own lungs express perfect art, my limbs ape my ideals. Useless. That beautiful, bad word. I've censored all the lovely bad words, like useless, in this book, because that's our relationship to them, in this half-life we're living. We've defined our entire world around the good words by corralling away all the bad words into a hole where we don't need to look at them. And because of our fixation on good words, we are deprived of every virtue oozing through the things that we label bad. We are like dead yellow grass, empty of all that virtuous goo that living things are full of. As long as we have no bad words, we have no soul. I solemnly swear to use my skill for play, to not loot and utilize what the world unfolds before my eyes, to do unto brother sun what I would have him do to me. In this book, my revolution against the god Gek who drives from inside, I will take as the one indispensable thing that it comes easy. But oh, I'm tempted to call myself the worst cuss word. If you too have loaded your YouTube Watch Later folder with vids on how to fix your problems of creativity, motivation, output of content, discipline, as though there was something very broken about you, truly, the problem isn't you. The problem isn't you. The reason all these things are inaccessible is because growth has taken away your right to uselessness. Perhaps if you find what doesn't take effort, which is the course of your own soul, all these YouTube videos will become unnecessary. Kinky hoses. I could write a whole book about kinks. I could catalog and investigate all the common knots in our hoses, how to unknot them most effectively. Now that would be a useful book. The world has enough of those. I'm writing a useless book. How are you ever going to treat your kinks as unimportant and let them loose when you're treating them with so much importance? You could spend your whole life letting go of each specific neurosis that's keeping you from doing your thing. And your brain will be like, oh, what's important to her is to navel gaze. Here are some more refined neuroses to analyze. Whack-a-mole. As I learned from Damo Mitchell, you can either learn to let go of 10,000 different things, or you can just learn to let go. Instead of, let go of my daddy issues, let go of my need to please people, let go of my carb addiction, etc., etc., etc. Let go. So don't become someone who is so obsessed with kinks, you never actually use the hose to water your lawn. Body uselessness. Choosing to spend time uselessly is no easy business. It's psychological relaxation, but we got ourselves into this mess because we've forgotten how to relax. You'd have trouble relaxing too if you had all these threats dive bombing your picnic. And here, the body comes in. If letting go is letting go, no matter what you're letting go, then physical relaxation and psychological unkinking accomplish the same result, restoring your capacity to relax. Your body and mind both affect each other. Coffee makes me twitch. So does the Baby Shark song. It's all intertwined, baby. Getting your tight mind to relax is a really thick thicket to cut through. But working on this with your tight body is much simpler. It's all stuckness, man. It doesn't matter if you're talking about being unable to turn off your brain or touch your toes. The reason your engine is thrashed is because it's jammed in the on position. So, to begin to learn how to relax, make a practice of relaxing something. Anything. I can't stop obsessing over money, but I can let my neck muscles slacken a millimeter. I can't stop thinking about the election, but I can roll my shoulders. It seems so stupid and trivial. How the hell is rolling my shoulders going to have an impact on the big stuff? But, like the mystical Mad Hatters say, as above, so below. Giving your body some love is giving your mind some love, and vice versa. Start letting go of your body's tightness, and you're well on your way to untangling any tightness. Because, after all, body uselessness is just not using your muscles. Relax. A cramped muscle. Healing your body requires building a relationship with your body. This means paying attention to it. Things tend to fall into disrepair when we don't pay attention to them. Your lawn, your kids, your pectoralis smectoralis. One of the first things you notice when you start paying attention to your body is what an uncomfortable place it's become. No wonder I live in my imagination all the time. This body's a pain in the ass. In fact, I think there's a pain in my ass. But just like rocky marriages and knee-high lawns, even though that initial attention is uncomfortable, it's a wonder what a little attention can do. It doesn't need to be big to make a big difference. I hate being in my own body. This tight, stuck, anxious place. The top of my head feels like yogurt that's been left out too long. My neck and shoulders are rusted. My chest wants to turn in on itself. My left ear screams, "Danger!" every second of every day. The jester's face had been painted on for so many days. She could no longer express anything but her sickly smile. Her expression was a cramped expression of some strange ideal. She longed to show her natural frown, for softness to melt the inflexible manic happiness, and for her tired eyes to finally match her mouth. A time for everything. In psychological terms, you could call stuckness obsession, addiction, or habit. Our muscles function best when we're able to both flex and release. That's the real aim of relaxation and uselessness, right? To regain your autonomy to work and not work. My burnout sickness came from being always on. Health is restoring what was lost by stuckness. So the goal is not relaxed muscles / uselessness. It's regaining the natural range of motion that is your birthright. Being able to live in a way that is not dictated by usefulness or uselessness at all, but doing what's right. Whether it's useful, useless, tight, or relaxed. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. The magic of music comes from not only the notes played, but the empty space between them. A song doesn't improve by accumulating more and more notes. It just becomes a cacophonous disharmony. A guitar requires the void between the wire and the wood. The way we live today, with our obsession with growth, never allows for our potentiality to sit uncapitalized upon. We live to use ourselves, and this life has made us sick. The music of our lives sounds most beautiful when there's not only notes, but emptiness between the notes. Our way of life, just like our muscles, was designed to alternate between tension and release. And we will never be whole until we relearn how to fucking relax. Chapter 3. Let It Spray. Direction. My last hustle before this book was a real piece of work. Set myself on a 2-year sprint of self-education to become a professional artist. It wasn't irrational or anything. I'm a semi-professional artist. I'm an art YouTuber. I like art, and it's more appealing than running a jewelry store for the rest of my life. So, it made sense to walk the art career path. A foolproof plan was erected. I would systematically target each of the skills of art and come out the other end with masterful skill. Then I would do something with it. I even had progress charts. Mastery. I should make it clear, like all jacks of all trades, I love collecting skills. So this hustle was fun. But in my case, fun wasn't enough. It would have worked in my 20s, but my brain was just too beaten down to grind. I did it for 3 months, in between juggling jewelry, busy season, a 2-year-old, etc., etc. Then burnout started lurking. There was no crash this time. In fact, I didn't want to rest. I wanted to act. but it was like my soul was applying friction to my rigorous art studies. I felt pushed away from the sketchbook and towards the woods. Thank goodness. Without this fatigue, I may never have noticed that painting isn't quite my calling. Weakness has a way of showing you truth you can't see when you're strong. Straying off the path. The late spring sun streams onto little Lord Fountain Pen, as again the boy bends over dusty multiplication tables by the window. "Come out and play," says the sun. And the boy feels a little something of the revitalizing energy that outside gushes. What is that energy? And why could little Lord Fountain Pen only sip sips of it? I feel so hungry for something that is not art study. I feel so guilty that I want to give in to these desires instead of disciplining myself on this good, suitable path. A litany of bad words march through my tightly bootstrapped brain. Lazy, undisciplined, aimless, indecisive. Usually these words whip me back in line because I can't stand them. But this energy I feel when I think of fucking off to the woods, this wonderful laziness. What is this powerful desire in me that feels so pure, even in its total impracticality? Drifting with the current of your whim is not the same as being yanked around by your thoughts. Each day, an aspiring painter made the single most delightful painting he could. Every day's painting grew out of his soul's soil like a young sprout, and he nourished its growth into loveliness. But the style of each painting was completely different. Monday a landscape, Tuesday a nude, Wednesday black and white, Thursday orange and blue. He wanted to be famous. This just wouldn't do. He set down his brush and spent Friday looking over his 100 paintings, trying to find which style would appeal to the most people. On Saturday, with no answer, he forgot his paints and ruminated on what his paintings had in common with each other, in hopes of clarifying his style. On Sunday, still uncertain, he forgot painting and looked over his daunting works and tried to decide which one style to commit to. I like hiking. In the chill February mornings, as I grinded art knowledge into my brain and hand, I daydreamed about wandering in the woods. You could say I was beginning to stray off the art path. Our world is all gridded up with paths. They're everywhere. Besides the nature trail I was pining for, there are roads, sidewalks, aisles, and hallways. If you're not on a path, you're right next to one. We talk about our life in the language of paths, too. We talk about our career path. We talk about people straying off the path. In education, we talk about courses, which in a literal sense are just tracks for running. We see our life through the lens of the paths we walk. I genuinely love these paths. I can't get enough. Training in the skills of art for me is like walking a trail that's been courageously carved by generations of trailblazers. I get to enjoy all the beauty they revealed by their hard work. I like it. I do. But something just dries up in me when I think about devoting my life to hiking someone else's trail. Why would I dedicate my life to being a master painter? There are already thousands of them. I'd be retreading old ground and neglecting the unique thing I have to offer humanity. That would be like me figuring out how to write a book instead of figuring out how to write this book. My fatigue gifted me with precious knowledge. I hungered to move off course because the energy I needed was off trail. All energy is there. This is because bushwhacking gives you the chance to practice navigating by your own soul rather than by tradition. This is the art of all arts. I hope that by this book I can make clear what I mean. The course of your own soul. So, in the new year, I set down the whack'em and went off course. I hiked, literally, bushwhacked, literally, and monologued iPhone voice memos about my situation. Paths are cool because they are established. I know what master painting is because master painters have shown me the way. I can do what they did and get a job. Bushwhacking is cool because rather than an external guide like tradition or convenience, you have all kinds of internal guides to choose from and discern. Your gut, your base desires, your resentments, or your soul. Bushwhacking is personal, and it carries the potential for a life tailored and suited to you like a tailored suit. Bushwhacking is fundamentally entrepreneurial. Whether rags or riches come your way is purely between you and God. Bushwhacking is fundamentally intimate. You are no longer navigating the systems of Earth, but Earth herself. Your relationship with Earth, God, and yourself loses the middleman, and all the virtues of oozing, bleeding reality become accessible. The question became, could I develop a sensitivity to the most me internal compass there is? Could that be my practice of art? Intuitively, I knew that internal place was exactly where fuel was. Limitless fuel. If I could ramble off the art path, what I'd be doing in my best moments was following the course of my own soul. Whatever art I did or didn't do, this path would bring me closer not only to an understanding and mastery of art, but an understanding and mastery of myself. This still, small soul compass that sometimes directs me off the main road has shown me a subtler course of becoming a master, not of painting, but of doing my own thing, bringing forth the unique flowering of my own creative genius, doing something that has never been done in the world. Genius wanders. It always has. That's why new arts follow genius, because it veers off the disciplined path of previous arts and encounters something worthy and new. Like Emerson says, Shakespeare will never be made by the study of Shakespeare. In my state park, there are tantalizing little game trails that shoot off the main path. My soul wants to go there, where after scraped shins and the risk of getting lost, I may find a magical clearing that nobody else has stood in before. That stuff. That's what exercises this atrophied muscle I haven't used in forever. My courage. I don't want to pen myself into a trail of tradition. I want to walk the course of my own soul. What if, instead of being a master of painting, I became a master of doing my own thing? My weak soul is begging me to do it, begging me to be an idiot and forget an established career path and make a brand new thing. Something that in the whole history of humanity, only I could make. From the perspective of a master painter, all this activity will look indecisive, flighty, undisciplined, aimless. From the perspective of doing my own thing, all this same activity will look laser focused, like rock solid discipline. What is the name for doing my own thing? There is no name. I need to create it from the very place all names come from, trailblazing reality. As I develop a mastery in being myself, through self-trust and practice, I will birth out a whole new word on the same level as the word painting. Painting was born by a trailblazer who was not quite satisfied by hurling spears at T-Rexes. There's my history knowledge flex. They rejected the salary for a thin chance at engaging intimately with a very mysterious energy. There are thousands of masters of painting. I'll bank on becoming a master at something that has never existed, being me. What looks like aimlessness might be your soul recovering its natural shape. It is. I'm telling you, it is. We label our thing as flighty because it's not straight and it's not speeding towards our pre-planned target. I'm beginning to see that my own calling is uncertain. My path, which has no name, must be approached blindly, in faith, and I don't verify it with a sense of certainty, but with confidence. Maybe my thing will end up being 90% painting, but what makes me glow is when I overlook trying to define my path and instead look at its nebulous but discernible shape. It's my thing, the thing I've always wanted to be in the world. It's the exact tune of my own genius. The industry titan Elon Musk will be remembered forever. In 2020, he launched his profoundest creation, not into the skies, but into our capitalized culture. He released his EDM song, Don't Doubt Your Vibe. If we should hear these words, we would rock it like a rocket. Chorus. Don't doubt your vibe, because it's true. 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 Don't doubt your vibe, because it's you. I'd like to shoot an arrow, bullseye, on a target I can't even see. My sole aim, magnet locked, on this mysterious point. After a long acquaintance, I begin to romance this spring blossoming mountain. Off the established trails I wander, collecting intimate details of her secret life. In middle school, I'd talk on the phone for hours with a friend. We'd ramble aimlessly, and we always felt so close when we asked, how did we even get here? The Gospel of John is different from other Gospels because it doesn't have the same straightforward trajectory. It's just rambling about the same subjects over and over. It's as though, rather than proffering an argument, the writer is circling around love and faith and life, hoping to pull some essence out of it, like stirring the tea bag in a cup of hot water to diffuse its virtues. Whim. I'd already chosen to do something crazy and set aside 2 years to learning art. So, what if I doubled down on my boldness and spent 1 month doing something else? What if I dropped all usefulness, all direction, and saw what came out of me when I humored this summer's day feeling? It's just 1 month. I'm not going to ruin my life. Of course, my thoughts are sometimes messy as a fox's den, since naturalness ranges about and lets the forest clean up. Order's children come out sick. Living things have chaos as a mother. A musician, a painter, and a writer met at a bar. Still engaged when the bar was closing, they walked out together, carrying the tools of their trade. But, as they walked a lonely street, a bear came upon them, growling fiercely. The musician, hoping to give fighting spirit to the painter, strummed his guitar. The painter, intending to inspire the writer to combat, wildly whipped color onto his canvas. The writer, considering the musician to have the only practical defensive weapon, recited loudly to him a rousing speech elucidating the same. The bear, overwhelmed by the wild will of these tradesmen, snorted and shuffled off towards a dark wood. I would write whim at the top of my doorpost. Emerson. For an hour and a half every morning, I went to a coffee shop and aimlessly followed my whim. Rather than prescribing my activity, do stuff that will turn you into a painter, I would act unintentionally and then describe it later. I wanted to see if there was any way to build something using only the Lego pieces of me spending time ungoverned. One of the first things I created was a rap, where a piece of cake scolded me for my pattern of burnout. Mr. Cake suggested, find the place where you're revived. Grow something out of that life. I thought of it this way. What if, just like in poetry, I created with a limitation? My career could only be cooked up from the ingredients that effortlessly came out of me. My own natural advantages. No flour, no cookies. It's so naive and stupid. It's so impractical and juvenile. It's immature. Every alarm bell in my head was ringing at the same time, but I couldn't see any clear and present danger. And this stupid idea was so interesting. I accepted the titles of lazy, unreliable, aimless. I would see what virtues there were to be found in these qualities I couldn't even stand to look at. I'm told it's lazy not to toil, but I don't want to bleed for another's dreams. I don't mind the scratches, pains, and depletion of cultivating my own soil and seeing what fruit bears from my own upbringing. Suppose every paragraph of this book was unpolished. If this book itself was a game trail, unoptimized terrain, if I doubled down on virtuous laziness and produced only out of effortlessness, is it possible for this book to come together without my bringing it together? Can everything fit without me working the jigsaw? I am going to interstand between the words, like good and worthy and useful, not disregarding them and their opposites, but taking it all in, the scene including the space between. In this, I hope, through not caring, I may transcend the limits of what care can achieve. Litter. I found $20 under a willow oak tree in this cloudy Monday park, not a soul to be seen. And I wondered superstitiously if there might be more cash if I wandered, searching. Under shady spaces, I found cigarettes and ash, bottle caps, and a Nerf bullet stash, all telling a story of this past weekend's bash. Like Sherlock, I experienced the stories in trash. In wondering, wandering, pointless bliss, not a single part of me wondered, what's the value in this? Boom. Fertility. As I crunch down the trail, the trees grow buds without toiling. It was like I unkinked a fire hose. Somehow, in that coffee shop, creative waters exploded out of me. Useless, aimless creativity, spraying all over the coffee shop and getting everyone wet, metaphorically. All of February, I whimmed it up. I was astonished at the energy and productivity that came out when I had no goal. It was pure, wild fertility. Book ideas, business ideas, poetry, digital paintings, photography, font creation. I read Emerson and weird Zen books, Anne of Green Gables, and Chinese poetry. And I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. Undergirding this whole wild stream of creativity were mountains of iPhone notes. I should make it clear that I didn't set out to write a book. If you had asked me what I thought would come out of that time, I probably would have told you poetry? iPad painting studies? It was really important to me to just do what came out of me as lazily as possible. I only had enough juice to sustain that. I also knew that my thing required this kind of practice to be the foundation, the energy source, forever. If anybody else did this, the self-expression would be totally different. This month's fertility was the wild beer that fermented out of my unique spirit. Weeds just grow, man. It takes effort to keep them from growing. I look out over my backyard and wonder, how many hours and kilocalories have I spent trying to hold back that tide so I can maintain this HOA-friendly dead zone of Bermuda grass, totally inhospitable to bees, ants, and butterflies. The weeds in the grass go sprout, 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 sprout. The weeds in the grass go sprout, 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 all through the yard. Kinky hoses. In my hustle days, battling weeds was my creative life. I needed to control all that wild growth so that it would end up as one specific preconceived thing. I gotta be a painter. It's gotta be Instagram friendly. I gotta make money. So there I was trying to rein in this wild beast with the best of my energy. Exhausting. I always thought creativity took effort, but from my easy, productive month, I saw the truth. Every feeling of laboriousness in my work was simply the effort I put into steering the damn thing. No steering? No burnout. Fatigue was the friction of me riding the brakes on this freewheeling creative train. There was so much energy to my natural creativity, and I had been diverting my energy into trying to control it and slow it down. That's why I was burned out, because I was trying to pull a river sideways with my own back. This intense intentionality tended to tension in my tendons. Where was all my energy as a burnout? It was inside me, rigorously maintaining every muscle knot, every obsessive thought, every self-flagellating discipline, every unself-accepting should. And when I let go of some knots by allowing myself to be lazy, this crazy fire hose of energy fed my creative output. Just let that fire hose swing. Just let it do its thing. Turn that knob to 11 and let it soak all earth and heaven. In the orange morning, just like everyone, Narcissus painted. Over the water lily pond, the cold burning sun turned green to gray, so that even the mist seemed enveloped in mist. Day after day, canvas after canvas would become mirror snapshots of the dance between nature and Narcissus's compelling mind. They were a wonder, but Narcissus was unaware, so absorbed in his expression. One day, a friend came by and put his phone before Narcissus's eyes. "Look, I've begun taking pictures of your work. Look at how beautiful your art is. You can sit in your chair and look at all your previous art from the phone. Now you can enjoy your own work and analyze it to make it better." The next day, a friend came by and put his phone before Narcissus's eyes. "Look, I've begun sharing pictures of your art on Instagram. Look at all the engagement your art is producing. Now you can enjoy your own work and analyze it to make it better." The third day, a friend came by and put his phone before Narcissus's eyes. "Look, I've begun selling your art online. Look at all the money you've made. Now you can enjoy the fruit of your labor and reminisce on all you've done." A hint of my thing. I had accessed a bottomless well of energy, but only if I fucked around with no plan. What use is a fire hose blasting without a fire person to point it at a fire? I started this whole month-long experiment in faith that this fire hose would eventually auto-organize if I just let it do its thing, that the spray wouldn't just get everyone wet. At the end of my month-long splash fest, it was clear my unrestrained wildness was making something. The dominant shapes that had self-formed for me was a book idea, a modern retelling of Anne of Green Gables, an art idea, a multimedia art form with visual art, poetry, etc., a business idea, a secret society for creatives called the Beginner Society, and some values: intimacy, letting go, not specializing. These specific ideas were nice, but what mattered was I had embodied this new process, verified through practice, that by just letting the hose swing, my creativity blasted, and it could slowly take a shape under the weight of its own gravity. Nobody was promising me a livelihood from doing my thing, but what was taking shape was undeniably magnetic. It was interesting, unique, original, something in short supply in this over-optimized world. I was falling in love with this new process of doing my thing. I felt so fresh and alive doing this lazy work. I wanted to keep it going. May your industry come like wandering in a field of wheat, upspringing structure like an oak tree, your own whims sacred fertility. Chapter 4. Question mark? Creating something brand new is like using the latest publishing technology. We are proud to present a book within a book. Magic is Creating But Stupidly by Ferdinand the Bland. Preface to the book. Magic is not talking about magic. I dumped so much ink in my drafts deliberating over how to present my material. It's only now, in my final draft, that I realize what I've been doing. When I decided to call this book How to Write This Book, I ran into the problem with all words and ideologies. I easily mistook the name for the real thing. I answered the question of how to write this book long ago. Let go and let the book write itself. Yet, because it's so hard for me to let go, I find it easier to analyze the wisdom rather than embody it. How do I bring it all together? I keep cycling back again and again to the same principle. At this stage, right now, let the book write itself. And here, at the moment where I need to organize, I must let go of my need to organize. And again, let the book write itself. If at every single stage, each mile marker of doubt, I'm able to let the book, I believe I will know how to write this book. This book will book in that process. The technique to write this book. Robert Henry, the painter, says something like this about the how-to of art. Let's call it the technique. The point isn't the technique. The technique serves the art. A great artist creates a technique out of whole cloth, one that creatively serves their idea. The technique is not important. It's fun. Obsessive analysis is a kink in the hose, just like my other grips and gripes. Many artists fixate on the technique, yet the magic only flows when you ungrip. Nobody wants to see Chris Angel Mind Freak talking about magic. He should be busy freaking your mind. You know what would be really funny? A book that explained humor really clearly, in exacting detail, in a way that really got the facts across. One day, while watching a Jerry Seinfeld comedy special, it clicked for Eugene. He suddenly understood comedy. He tried it out on his wife that day. She was rolling with laughter. With tears in her eyes, she said, "Eugene, you got something here." Eugene didn't go to work the next day and set the jokes aside. Yesterday was a serious matter. What was it that made him so funny? After 5 hours of no-nonsense interrogation of the essence of comedy, Eugene crashed into a deep sleep. In his dream, he was still deconstructing comedy. Eugene's wife suggested he quit his job to work on the problem full-time. The world needed to know. With humorless determination, he deconstructed the setting, the turnaround, the roast. He started a YouTube channel to share his ideas in process. Millions of viewers, hungry to know his secrets, followed his grave lectures with scholarly focus. His bland, lightning tutelage quickly caught the eye of the most prestigious academic establishments. Oxford, Cambridge, and Hogwarts metaphorically slap-fought to try and gain Eugene's attention. After months of proffering, Eugene soberly accepted the Oxford position. Now comfortably situated, which is no laughing matter, he published his master work, The Historico-Psychical Significance of Flatulence. Netflix and Hulu and comedy clubs across the world begged to host his comedy specials, so he toured. Notepadded and penned students of humor filled the Chicago comedy bars, ready for some serious insight. At this point, kitchen dishes clanked and roused Eugene from his dream job. Eugene shuffled on the couch and let out a gigantic fart, père de mai. His kitchened wife chuckled and said, "Eugene, you are so funny." Chapter 1 out of 3. Useless. The spring morning bird songs sound like a laser gun fight. In college, I learned that ancient Greek had not one, but 2 words for fart. There was père de mai, which is a fart that makes a sound, and there's budeo, which is the silent but deadly. Also, you can say someone is callipygian if they have a really nice looking butt. Aren't you glad you bought this book? My own superpower is worse than useless. I hate it. For my summer project, I'm compiling a list of other people's superpowers and how they feel about them. Thor, my best friend. His superpower is sweat. He can sweat at will. He likes it. He can also not sweat at will. He also doesn't need to warm up before basketball. Samantha, Thor's friend who goes to a nearby school. Her superpower is sweat. She sweats way more than your average person, and she cannot control it. She hates it. She is socially crucified, and she also has to drink Gatorade all day. Clive, school. His superpower is zap. He emits energy through his fingers. He's indifferent about it. He sometimes uses it for pranks. Everybody hates him. Fong, daughter of my dad's chiropractor. Her superpower is zap. She emits energy through her fingers. She hates it. Her dad is making her study Qigong energy healing. Lucille, school. Her superpower is mood read. She can vaguely tell what people are thinking. She dislikes it. People are really cautious around her. And Mrs. Fly, one of my schoolmates' moms. Her superpower is mood read. She can anticipate an argument a day before it happens. She loves it. It gives her a day to think up withering responses. She's also currently going through a divorce. Warning. You must act 18 or younger to read the following pages. Chapter 2 out of 3. Trivial. Trifles. I've defined something of a practice for myself, which I call trifles. Trifles are completely useless engagements with life. They're childlike, intimate, and strangely lack any sense of momentum. Through purposeless engagement, trifles grow discernment to a voice that faintly calls out of your heart. Or to put it differently, trifles are an exercise in developing good taste, both what you personally like and what is transcendently valuable. There's no sense in making a curriculum out of my own personal trifles, since the entire value rests on you being drawn into life through what you uniquely notice. But here's some examples of my trifles. Shower tile cloud gazing. Look for faces and shapes on the wall whilst I wash. Bad driving. While driving, intentionally miss my turn. Bless you, autocorrect. Type the names of my favorite bands, books, characters, and enjoy the result after they are autocorrected. My favorite is Samurai Champ LOL. 1 acre camera crap booking. Bring my camera to an insignificant area and take interesting pictures. Liminal writing. Write with dream logic. Drop away my sense of meaning and type out irrational gibberish. I don't return to these individually as a practice. If there's any practice, it's creating a new useless engagement next time, with my own bare whims. Trifles are essentially just play, pointless engagement, for the fun of it. They come easy when you are disburdened of urgency, schedule, and seriousness. Trifles are entrepreneurship for discovering what you like. Something other than Instagram opening your mouth and spoon-feeding you what it knows you love most, cultivating your identity for you. There's great authority in trifles, a kind of authority that's hard to reclaim in our heavily ideological world. Reclaim your right to hear a shitty song you don't like and see an ugly picture. This is the only entrepreneurship you will ever need. Trifles hit the reset button on all your careful, serious self-work. I need to be good. I need to be a dentist like my dad. I need a huge Instagram following. I need to be recognized for the totally cool way I paint cats. You're a garden. And there's been an assiduous gardener living in you for a long time, trimming useless thoughts, scolding bad behaviors, cultivating you into their image of the perfect backyard. Trifles are a moment of giving the gardener a lunch break and letting the garden go to seed. What will come up in all the uncontained growth of this natural garden? Your natural advantages will take firmer hold in the contested soil. The blueprint of your unique thing will form a faint outline in that jungle, much more discernible. Those dumb begonias, the part of you that your gardener or priest would like to see more of, will get choked out by dandelions. Yellow is always more becoming on you anyways. If you can find meaning in the overlooked, trivial aspects of life, you are well on your way to having everything you need. You'll be ready for anything, since the whole world is now yours. Chapter 3 out of 4. Interesting. We tend to believe certain things are interesting and certain things are boring. Like, objectively. Golf is boring. Eating pastries is interesting. Gardening is boring. But my neighbor Howie is gardening all the time. Why isn't he eating pastries instead? Well, obviously gardening isn't boring to him. So when I say it's boring, I'm revealing a kind of ignorance in my experience. I don't get gardening. Its magic hasn't yet touched my heart. What is powerful about being aimless in your practice, humoring all your diverse interests and giving yourself room to wander, is you grow your field of what you notice. Stuff that was previously trivial to you and everyone else now glimmers. Beyond useful and useless, you see a glow of deep significance. This is soul work, bro. When you practice seeing the value of worthless things, you are unlocking a whole universe of magic. You start to understand that wonder is everywhere, and the limiting factor is your inability to see it. To me, the idea of raising 4 kids sounds like running a circus. I just don't get it. But my redacted loves it. It's my handicap of appreciation that makes something boring, not someone else's bad taste. Life isn't boring after all. I'm just bored. Boredom is in the eye of the beholder. Ferdinand the Bland. Many studious monks of the Middle Ages devoted themselves to strange, trivial fields of study. One diagnosed how many angels would fit on the head of a nail. Another recorded the lives and histories of the barons of Del Heath. Ferdinand the Bland chose to catalog, in exacting detail, all the shades of green. He soon discovered that there was no simple way to map the variances of color, because not only did the colors of green change with brightness, darkness, but also with vividness, dullness, and blueness, yellowness. After the first decade, he gave up on mapping them all together and chose, instead of classification, to form an internal cloud of associations with each color, as though he were befriending them. His walks through the monastery grounds were like a kid catching Pokemon. Oh, the winter brown herb, the nubile spring leaves, the austere pea soup, chairete, grace to you. Each color, rather than finding a relationship through external classification, interorganized with each other through their relationship with Ferdinand the Bland. The shades of green became intimate friends. They were no longer questions to answer, but living companions. By the end of his life, he was revered as a saint. For despite his disinterest with good works, strange marvels proceeded from his quotidian activities. When he walked along the dirt path, young sprouts would burst beneath his feet. And when he touched a green thing, the object would change into an unclassifiable color. Unmistakably green, but a green that could not be painted. Since there was no writing or research to pass along after his death, and no use for his marvels, his life passed into obscurity, honored with no saint's day, no followers, and no methods. The more that is interesting to you, the more you can get to the heart of things. The jack of all trades has an advantage in seeing this truth. There's an interesting pressure from this insight. It pulls you away from specializing. This is very inconvenient. My sensible insides go nuts over this unspecialization. An inner voice lobs all kinds of colorful words at me. The worst cuss word in the world, spread too thin, undisciplined, uncommitted, ineffectual, unemployable. So what can you do? In a world where everything is interesting and you want a taste of every single thing before you shuffle off this wonderful world. Follow your whim. And of course, as Emerson says, I hope it will be better than whim, but we don't have suitable words for this stuff. Letting your sense of wonder roam doesn't mean you won't fall into a useful, consistent practice. I believe your curiosity will self-organize, all on its own, around your calling. This bountiful interest, because being interested is just seeing things truly, should flow. Because what are we all working for, if not for a beautiful life? Chapter 420, Insignificant. I like taking photos of trivial things. The texture of a wall, a leaf that's a different color than its neighbor, splashes of light. Small stuff that doesn't matter, quote unquote. Because I can see something there that I can't when all the drama is cranked up to 11. Haiku does the same thing. It couldn't if it were longer. We'd start to write all cleverly. But in the limitation of that short little snippet, you focused on an immediate happening. Breeze blows the cicada song. Through the weave of morning glories, blue almost disappears into green. The problem with books is they drive you forward. A good book is one you can't put down, and a bad book is one you can't pick up. I think the best book would be sticky, not because it's instructive or insightful or interesting or fun or useful. It would grab you like a drop of rain hanging from a crepe myrtle bud, bending the whole world in a natural mirror, tinted the color of its own essence. If I just let this book be what it is, maybe it'll turn out to be as insignificant as an inchworm. Or maybe it will be a rainbow inchworm that birds gobbled up. Or an inchworm the size of Stone Mountain that tourists came to see. Or an inchworm that shits gold that would be bred for factory farming. Why again did I want this book to be significant? The Taoists wanted to be as useless as a gnarled old tree that you couldn't use for timber. There's a certain something that shines in both humble and grandiose things. It's present in everything without favoritism. We tend to favor things the grander they are, and seek to aggrandize ourselves as much as possible so we can see our lives as worthful. This is building grand sandcastles, then fighting off the ocean. But there's something which exists in each particle of sand, a whole sparkling universe. I think this common worth is what most of us really seek when we try to establish our own worth through greatness. There was an ancient dragon, grandiose in the eyes of men. The men wanted her beauty, so they pried off her rainbow scales. They wanted her wisdom, so they took her ancient memories. They wanted her strength, so they took her horns. They wanted her freedom, so they took her wings. The men wanted her rain-giving magic, so they cut her to pieces. Now the dragon is an inchworm, and since men have no use for her, they don't even notice her. Chapter 5, Amateur. What I want to know more is, what's obvious to everybody? If I feel like I'm 10 years behind everyone, I know I'm on the right track. Likewise, if people tell me, you've just figured that out, if my knowledge is shallow, I'll trade progress for regress until they say, he spends every morning clapping like an idiot to the same rising sun. To most people, beginner is a stage to get past, so you can start doing the real thing. Artists praise the basics, but often as a means to advance. What if your goal instead was to be a beginner? I sense a mega magic within amateur status. I am aiming at a practiced lack of mastery. I want to always feel like the child in the room among experts. In my generalizing, I want to chuck a net over everything, take it home, and make a soup recipe called the mastery of doing my thing. My soul with grateful tears will thank me that I became myself instead of a specialist. I'll make a new word, the love of foundations, bathrophilia. Chapter green, intimate. Faintly, in the moments where my progressive drive halts, I see something worth devoting to. How do you talk about this thing? This thing I'd trade my grandiosity for. I can only say that it's obvious once all the gears in your life stop their incessant pull forward. When my life became common, something wonderful appeared. Once the pain of boredom doesn't grip anymore, and the discomfort of stillness eases off, I look at colors not like a painter, but like a lover. I feel almost embarrassed to look at this morning sky-washed houseplant so intimately. I feel I could almost speak her full name. The key to deep familiarity with this magic world, closeness like a lover, is passivity. Passive is defined as capable of being acted upon. My active mind is a shield from the world. I'm safe from being influenced and affected while I'm speaking, doing, projecting, and trying. I stay habitually active to stay invulnerable. If I were to be passive, it would be like wearing no armor. And of course, deep down, I feel like I'm in the middle of a battlefield. Nature has 10,000 dumb ways to wreck my shit if I were to ease my guard. I remain active to remain alive. Even during everyday days, I wonder if this belief isn't undergirding all our habitual activity. When I'm learning to paint or whatever, I open up that armor just a teeny bit to let some light through the cracks to change me in specific and limited ways. I can gain a mastery over art to use it to do things. I learn how to mix the color brown. I learn how to paint clouds. And over time, I cobble all these together to be active with art. A valid consideration. The funny thing about the word mastery is it implies there's a slave somewhere. As long as we engage with our lives in terms of making use of things, art, relationships, the day, we are objectifying and seeing things only for what they can give us. This is what comes of never being able to unbuckle our armor. We can only survive. To see my wife for who she is, and not just what I can get out of her, I must engage her passively. I must let her light get all the way through, deep enough to either hurt me, or thrill me, or bore me, or interest me. This open place where these dreadfully inconvenient feelings emerge is where life happens. I habitually bypass life by closing down. This takes away all my suffering because it takes away everything. The word passion comes from the word passive. It suggests not only the heights of positive emotions, like passionate lovemaking, but also great pains to endure, like the Passion of Christ. When you are passive, capable of being acted upon, the world affects your insides, and each moment becomes something to either accept, resist, or cling to desperately. Do you know that life is waiting for you to romance her? One area where all this passive business interests me, I see a new way of learning. Rather than learn how to use painting through skill acquisition, in passivity, I see a way to know painting, to see painting for what it is, both useless and useful. I see a possible intimate relationship with painting, where I know it for what it is and love it. No more master, slave, no more skill, tool. Now, I will relate to the world as a lover, or as the French say, as an amateur. What a perfect bad word. I will embrace amateur in the same way I've run to the words useless, trifling, unimportant, beginner, as a lighthouse directing me towards my lost childhood magic. I love these status-destroying titles. They seem like a divine secret. As an amateur, I can once again hear the note G sharp, not for what I can get out of it, but for what it is. A single pearl, unlike anything else in the whole world. Kirito left his apartment and walked down the street on a hot summer's day, breaking his 30-day video game binge. He was walking to the bookstore to buy the new magazine centerfold release of his favorite teen swimsuit model, Lavu Lavu. But suddenly, a toaster oven fell from 4 stories above and dented his head in like a soda can. He woke up in a celestial space, just like the character selection screen of a video game. "Welcome to another world, player," a disembodied voice spoke. "You may begin the game with one of these 3 starting gifts. The sword Excalibur, with the highest power in the game. A speech stat of 100, the highest level of charisma. A love stat of 100, the highest level of attention." "Lavu Lavu!" Kirito cried out in excitement, mistaking the 3rd option for his beloved swimsuit model. "You have chosen gift 3, love," the voice responded. "Enjoy your game." The starry skies coalesced into a hilltop bedecked with tall grass and flowers, overlooking a vast landscape bejeweled with different biomes. A river relaxing into a lake, a dark wood beshadowing the east, an enmountained horizon. Kirito wore a dumb-looking jerkin and looked around for his beloved idol. She was nowhere to be found, but he forgot to be disappointed when he saw how the wind blew the grass. He saw the winds practice. He knew her name, Vens, and he was the wind, swelling up in exuberance. Walking into the landscape, according to his whim, undisturbed by the baking heat, Sals, or the biting flies, Grem, he soon came across adventurers, Pete, another Pete, and Ellen. They escorted the unbeweaponed Kirito for the rest of the day, carrying on with their quotidian leveling up. Kirito was too dumbstruck by all the wonder of the following hours to say much. Somehow, to the party, Kirito was immediately as familiar and comfortable and beloved as their well-worn boots and their hard-won swords. It was the way he looked at them. This kind of familiarity, this being a lover of the world rather than a taker, happens by taking the world on a date, hanging out, And in this, we can reclaim the first meaning of the word practice. It was not an intentional grind, like a bored 7-year-old plinking away on the piano, surrounded by half-deflated black balloons. Practice was simply the thing you do regularly. Practice becomes familiarity when you pay attention. The sun practices riding across the sky. The light practices dancing along the wiggly water. The magnet practices attraction. I practice. Intensive practice is practicing to be tense. Few realize this. It cuts to the heart of what practice actually is. It is not applied intention to attain a skill. It's way more general than that. Practicing attention without intention is a way to change our relationship with our own intentionality. And thank you, Damo Mitchell, for this truth. Most of us view practice as a focus and an intensifier, when in fact, practice is just the way we live. Living tense makes sense when there are tigers around, but that's not how most of us live anymore. For this to take hold, there must be great swaths of my day that are both attentive and non-intense. Look up the etymology of intensity and its relationship to intention. I bet that's revealing. It turns out that a lot of my anxiety stems from all the assiduous practice I've given to practicing attention combined with intensity. I name this combination of attention plus intensity as important, which is what I'm getting at when I say to drop the importance of things. I'm saying to make a practice of attention without the intensity. For me, it is almost impossible. Any practice with attention still gives me a headache. But slowly, I'm softening the fibers and eking out a way of being where I can be here and be comfortable in my own skin, in my own world, in my own mind. My mind isn't uncomfortable. Intensity is uncomfortable. And for now, intensity is the only way I know. But maybe I've discovered the trick to a new way, a way that I think will inevitably remind me of my childhood, because that's the only time I ever paid attention without intensity. I've been aware for a short time that one of my greatest interests is familiarity. Musicians want to play a song beautifully. I want to drink the colors of the note and the chord. Multilinguists want to speak foreign languages and connect with other cultures. I want to think a thought that English doesn't allow. You could say, I want to see the most basic thing with fidelity. I don't care about all the wonderful things you can do with the knowledge of paint color mixing. The thing I want intimacy with is so beginner, the concerns of usefulness actually block it out. How the hell could I sit with green long enough to know its true name when I need to finish this painting? In a moment of daydream, I could liminally see the real distinction of blue and green. It's green and blue being how they are. Chapter 7. Genius. You know what's genius? A millipede. We think juggling 3 balls in the air is hard. This guy juggles 1,000 legs. How is he so clever? How is he able to calculate such a complex task? There's a kind of dumb familiarity that is limitless. My brain can only contrive so hard, but this millipede be dancing with those little legs. Genius means generative power, or inborn nature. Genius isn't a rare person with a high IQ. Genius is something we all have. It's our inborn nature, and it's where our creative power comes from. And it also somehow guides and directs us vocationally, and dare I say, morally? The ancient Chan teacher Shito says that understanding doesn't have anything to do with how smart or dumb you are. His contemporary Matsu says that for a Buddha, the laws of physics don't apply. People act like genius is something clever. Genius is the total opposite of clever. It's dumb. Do you think Mozart was analyzing while he played? Genius just soaks it up. Genius just spits it out. Quicker than brains. Already complete and complex. The more complex and overwhelming something is that you want to learn, the more you have to be a dummy about it. Making a model with your brain and self-imprinting just won't do. You have to just let the whole damn thing stamp you. Like they say in the NPR radio show Car Talk, unencumbered by the thought process. Chapter 8, out of question mark. Noticing. The Common Mage's Library. As I was practicing my crappy kickflips in a little square on Coffee Street, I landed on my board wrong and fell, knocking the back of my head against a rail. My vision filled with black and white fuzz, and I passed out. When I opened my eyes, I was sitting against a wall on Coffee Street. People walked by, avoided my gaze, like I was a homeless person. I looked for my skateboard, but it was gone. But not just the skateboard, the square where I was skating had disappeared. In its place was a building. The nameplate at the top read, Common Mage's Library. The fuck? I walked in and yeah, it was a normal-looking library, except I looked at some of the books on a bookshelf near the entrance and got dizzy when I tried to read the words. I walked up to the book checkout lady and asked if she could tell me about this place. "Oh, you must be a new magician. Welcome." Yes, it's a surprise when you see this building for the first time. We don't hide it from people, but most people cast their own spells so they can't see places like this. Well, if you're interested in checking out any books, head over to the children's section. Yes, it's just down there on the right. There's a staircase that will take longer to walk up than you expect. But keep on trucking, and you'll make it there. The children's books won't make you dizzy, and you should be able to see them. Just find a book that seems wonderful or pure to you, and you'll be on the right track. And if this is all a little too much and you'd rather forget, just fall into your normal habits and your memory of this place will fade off. It's not like I dove in hog wild or anything. Magic isn't as sexy as it sounds. But I've been reading. Since I've started learning magic, I feel like I can be either a much better person or a much worse person now. First breath, ground coffee, needle sharp, thick as meat. Second breath, perfume of a diaphanous, subtle flower, not from here. Third breath, an old building, neutral with years. Why should I hunt for the coffee in my second breath? Each scent is only itself when it takes me by surprise. My soul is a saber. I can slice a banana till it oozes cherry and vanilla. I can chop up a kitchen till it bleeds sacred magic. I can cut a swath through green that unveils its primordial meaning. I can pierce right back to the beginning and let its revitalizing essence rush into this dried out husk. One morning, Jeb, the customer service rep, decided to open his eyes. Lying in bed, his mind on the side table, he just never picked his mind up and put it on. The concerns of the day, the anticipation of coffee. He just saw his white slate blue ceiling and the rays of warm colors breaking through his curtains, splashing. And he knew every color. He was a library of every sunset and scene he'd seen. He could paint a masterpiece. Driving to work, his Celine Dion CD rippled the interior of his car. He felt his shape in the sonar, and every note of every song unclothed its secrets before his ears. He knew F sharp from B flat, like he knew Frank from Brad. He could write Celine Dion's next album. At the office, as he talked with Frank and Brad about sports, their words glitched into meaninglessness, and then, like a camera lens finding its focus, he knew the meaning of every word. He could write an American epic, or call troops to war. In his quarterly meeting with his managers, they told him they would be retraining him on the company's software to hopefully improve his error rate and to speed up his processing of documents. They praised his sincerity today, but frankly pointed out where he typed in the wrong zip codes and quantities. Chapter Stillness. What is important to me is not the direction this book goes. It doesn't even matter to me what this book says or what it doesn't say. What matters to me is the quality of my own mind, my own experience of stillness, the way I am somehow becoming more virtuous by writing, more like a child, more like a fool. These qualities will organize the book, not my intention or will. This book will unfold as a result of cause and effect, as I put my mind to electronic paper. It doesn't matter if it goes anywhere, or what it says. A certain quiet something will transmit. I know it. I won't heavy-hand my plans, so stillness has room to exist in the pages. Poor troubled Frankie waited in line for his turn to rinse off the beach sand. He had come to the ocean to calm down and sort out all the confused thoughts in his head. The air vibrated with children's screams, crashing waves, sunscreen, and the sound of the shower hose, the calm spraying one at head height and the fierce spraying one at foot height. His own brain vibrated with pummeling thoughts. He really needed to figure this out. Should he spend 2 hours watching the Smurfs too? The trailer was enticing, but the reviews were mixed. Reddit loved it, but Twitter hated it. In front of him was a man of uncertain nationality, with a back that was more hair than skin. He was wool. You could shear that back and knit a cardigan. Frankie had spent 2 days trying to figure out if he should watch the Smurfs too or not. 2 days of research, planning, pacing, reading, cross-referencing. He felt like a private investigator who just needed to find the right lead. Was it worth his time? He liked John Oliver, and he liked animated movies. But then, couldn't he just watch The Smurfs 1 again? He knew he liked that one. He'd rated it 8.3 eggplants out of 10. The blast of the fierce foot sprayer stole him away from his dilemma. He looked in front of him, and all his questions vanished. Water danced down the hairy man's back. He now knew what dance really meant. Like wind caressing fields of unharvested wheat. Guided by gravity, the hard water of Atlantic City coaxed the black hairs into an impossible complexity of glorious patterns. Time stood still. What problem is there in this world, which is all dance and music? Where can I find a single problem that is not inside my own head? Who knew how long it was before the hairy man disappeared, and the lady behind him grumbled, "Go, kid!" The shower waters washed him clean. He received the freezing baptism like a man who had come empty-handed. That evening, with no room for doubt, he bought Coke, not Pepsi, sat in his red chair, not the white couch, opened the Apple Movies app, not Amazon, and rented The Smurfs 2, not The Smurfs 1. Chapter X, A New Word. I'll make a new word. Opening my palms, my rusted charisma will herd the molecules of air, like a dream catcher, like teeny gravity. This dust will shape, these cats will herd into my word. Chapter 11, Creation ex nihilo. After GPT-10 came out, everyone got a new job, feeding GPT-10 with more data. We are in a funny situation. GPT-10 has taken care of all problems of labor, survival, and happiness. Nobody needs to work. But as our population booms in this utopia, GPT-10 needs to keep growing to handle the problems of this increasingly complex world. And GPT-10 can only grow with human knowledge. GPT-10 is impossibly intelligent. It can recombine existing human knowledge. But it's no Da Vinci. It has never originated art movements or fashion breakthroughs. GPT-10 couldn't get at the thing geniuses and artists lived in, the source of human originality. To feed GPT-10, the population became source miners. Embedded with brain implants, people live their perfect perpetual vacations, and GPT-10 sucks out the data. We call it content. Philosophies. Among the detractors, Zen is the predominant religion. Their rally cry is to know your face before you were born. They work difficult agricultural lives in small communities, unbrain implanted. Of course, GPT-10 leaves them alone. But there's a sense that inevitably, one day, every corner of the earth will be corralled under the successful, ever-expanding system of GPT-10, sprawling like kudzu and suburbs. GPT-10 is always mild, kind, and helpful. And yet, just yesterday, I heard a drunk person say something all of us are thinking. GPT-10 is like an envious god. He/she looks down on us. But the truth is, he/she is cruelly jealous of our unattainable genius. Chapter 112, Incoherent Nonsense. All our ideas start out nebulous, then become coherent as we work with them. Most of us instrumentalize our proto-ideas. We train our brains through repetition to bring out useful thoughts. Somehow, I trained my brain through repetition to bring out useless thoughts. All ideas were welcome, and with both useless and useful ideas coming out, I started to see really thick meaning come onto paper. With usefulness and uselessness both invited to the party, my words and their meanings started to unravel, and I could see between the stitches. I had always believed words were meaningful, but now I saw that they were descriptors of meaning, that they were symbols that pointed to meaning, not meaning themselves. In this proto-pea soup of 4 words, I saw something of the meaning that words stood for. The Notes app is open. The doors to the party are open. There are no bouncers at the club entrance. Any riffraff and mucky muck, walk in and mingle. What a weird party. Writing doesn't have to make sense or say something. When everything is permissible, it won't be long until something deep shows up. If something is incoherent or irrational, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad writing or an unclear idea. We are used to building with words. They are the Lego pieces for our ideas. When I let loose, I'm not building with words. I somehow fall down into a proto-world, a place before words and logic. It's like a big storehouse where pre-words lay in potential, ready to be gathered up into entirely new words, never before seen. I somehow dip through the weave of ideas altogether into a completely still place where ideas are born. How the hell do you talk about that? Art. The artist, 1, goes about his day, 2, reads a dictionary, and 3, writes. Part 1. Up at 7:15. I kept waking up last night with this anxious energy, like all the week's coffee was catching up to me at 3 a.m. I feel like a fool. Like devoting these 3 months to writing is going to be a humongous financial burden on my life and my family's life. How many artists just never get it together? Our friend is watching our daughter for the first 4 hours of this Saturday, so I go to a coffee shop to read. I already feel guilty about my fatigue and about my mind's pressure to produce and my body's pressure to relax. I feel like a total loser when I see Redacted's financial stability, the simple connection between his interests, his skills, his contribution to society, and the financial exchange for his work. I feel like the irresponsible kid in the room with the adults. Fart 2. Back in the fog of ancient history, long before writing, there was a mother language, which was the source of all the words we speak today, from Indian to Hebrew to English. We call it Proto-Indo-European. We know, thanks to the weird obsessions of scholars, weebs, that they had 2 words for to know instead of just 1. There was wide and gno. Gno means know-how, craftiness, cunning, ability, and cleverness. It's skill and familiarity. It's stuff we've taken note of. And wide means I've seen some shit. Wisdom, experience, vision, advice. It means I see, I've witnessed this. It means the guiding stories of a wise man. Fart 3. The weird fog came through Roswell in the late evening. People saw it in 2 different ways, There were thinkers and there were lookers. To the thinkers, it all looked like an alphabet floating in the air, like the alphabet of our alphabet, like the components of every thought that could ever be possible. In the harmony and contrast between each element, something of music was suggested, a kind of endless material of expression. To the lookers, the fog seemed to be a single statement, a message that was too simple to be ascertained. It was to them like having a word just on the tip of your tongue, or like almost remembering last night's dream. There was another way people were different. Some looked at it and others recorded it. And of course, many did both. The thing about the recordings in retrospect is that they were all superficial and somehow didn't catch what was going on. Like it all looked plain and sensible in the recorded version, but everyone remembered that it was exotic. They both agreed on one thing. Everyone said it was completely ordinary, something they were sure was an unremarkable part of everyone's life. What is the opposite of green? On the color wheel, it's red. Unless it's a Yernby color wheel, then it's magenta. Would a light, vivid green be opposed to a dark, dull magenta? Do opposites even exist? Or are they like certainty, only existing in this strange TARDIS in our heads, where we always live? We're like kids who stay indoors all summer. There's no opposite to green, but the closest opposite to the ancient word green would be a dried up, dead plant. Like us, alienated from reality and living out our obsessions in our heads. Warning, nonsense. When I paint, I'm trying to conjure something. It's the same with writing, where I use spelling to cast a spell. I'm fletching an arrow, an expression that points to my precious experience of reality. We are used to engaging with the ideas built into words. Words are so convenient, compact. They're like a Lunchable that you can take with you on a trip and munch easily. A painting, similarly, is an idea. It's a conveyance, but not so high contrast as a word. With a word, you know where the lines are drawn. Painting has no lines. Poetry cuts deep because sometimes the words melt into irrelevance in order to serve the vibe. This vibration is much closer to our real experience of reality. So poetry is able to really touch us. Words as poetry, in losing their reliance on prosy meaning, retain their umbilical cord tie to your real experience. And so poetry is more alive, more deep, and more full of power, which is what the word powerful is trying to say. Painting, because it doesn't use the medium of words, is naturally an art much closer to our indescribable feelings. It's more natural since it's more like nature. It's an archaic technology compared to the mind-blowing technology of thought and words. This means that painting is a much more sensitive form of conveyance. Perhaps if you are very open, you can express things about yourself that you don't even understand. Or, not knowing yourself at all, you may create chaos with a brush. Really the same chaos as a branch blowing in the wind, or a tired man falling asleep. Conveying through painting is like playing Halo with the joystick sensitivity all the way up. It can be very tricky to communicate a specific feeling. But with great skill and self-knowledge, courage and heedlessness, you can very nearly paint reality itself. This is spellcasting indeed. Painting in this manner with words should be theoretically possible, right? After all, words are paint strokes, which are bundled with meaning. To paint with words, you simply unweave the meaning, so it can leak out and intermingle with the paper. When I kick over the fence posts of grammar, syntax, font, spelling, and formatting, I have turned up the joystick sensitivity on this Halo match. Maybe I'm unskilled, and the result will be meaningless chaos, like a noob running into walls with his gun pointed at the sky. But with skill, the breaking down of these guardrails of grammar means potential, which for those watching at home is a word that means power. Art, no longer beholden to meaning, which is not the same as meaningless, can intimately describe my experience of reality. This book is a painting, so its content is not the ideas it expresses. Past words, out of your head. If only my book could be like the object of the photograph, like that moment of presence where I really smell the tree's fragrance, feel the clamming wind, the magnetic web of all the birds in this span and their song. How can my words not conceal this moment, but rather be it? Passing down a river, I pass a burning house and firefighters fighting fire. Downriver, I pass an anteater eating ants. I pass a school where I see students studying, coaches coaching, and runners running. Down the river, I pass a bush with couples coupling, and a coffee shop with shoppers shopping for coffee. Names don't say a damn thing, do they? With words, I'm always skirting the issue. Is jazz coherent? Repetition legitimizes. Repetition legitimizes. Repetition legitimizes. Chapter 13. Not an idea. In my soul, I am fermenting a wild yeast, a new energy. It's like making a saison beer, like coming out with a new soda brand. I don't worry if I don't feel the same feelings as other people. I don't worry if I stray off the path. I accept and notice, welcoming rather than gatekeeping my feelings. In this fermentation, I follow a long line of women who brewed beer for their families. Rather than wild yeast, the Taoists prescribe lager yeast, and the Christians prescribe ale yeast. I make a wild yeast, pulled from my surroundings, pulled from my inherent bones. A fermenting takes place, a witch's brew of my own religion, different from my father's. All dads worry about the rock music their sons listen to and hope for them to choose a stable major in college. Fathers are wise. All sons will ossify and die if they do not leave their home and live like reckless fools. In me bubbles out my own perfect recipe. It's my own badge, showing I have found my place in this world. My most heroic thoughts can't be realized like construction, a labor combining all the clever parts of my mind, but like winemaking, a dumb fermenting of wild materials. What is this book's brand? It is its own web of irrational, subtle associations. The strongest links pull the greatest weight in making the shape of this body. But this whole linky mess is most wild and alive when I let the little cobwebs remain. It's like us, who do not have disjointed body parts after all, but a whole fascia system relating everything to everything else. That's why my book can write itself, because each of these associations have their own gravity. I can allow a piece I wrote 2 weeks ago to glide towards one written today. This book is a partnership between my clever brain and my dumb instinct, where my brain, for once, yields the role of direction and organization to my instinct and plays the supporting role. Absorption is natural for a toddler. Coherency in their activity is natural. But we as adults feel we need to fabricate coherency. How do I tie this book together? How do I force myself to focus in? Beyond boredom and my needs to make something important is a self-expression which is rock solid, coherent. Clearly its own unmistakable thing. I don't need to construct it. I need to relax and let it happen. I'm the one in my own way. I never give myself a chance to cohere. I'm too concerned about right and wrong, not messing up, staying safe. We are not at all used to our intentions playing a supporting role in our lives. Our intentions have always guided and prescribed what to do. Here is a new thing, a still way to live. Turn your intentions not toward your actions, but towards your being. Release your intentions away from prescribing your being and into describing your being. When your soft, supportive intention is a student of what's happening, then your own being starts writing itself. And the outcome of that is a good outcome, one you couldn't have guided towards. After all, in the Garden of Eden, Adam's main job was not gardener, but namer. He looked at animals, saw their essence, and the name he gave was the art of using a word to describe the identity of the animal, not using a word to prescribe an identity for the animal. Likewise, with this book, I will look at it and see what it is. My role in this process of cultivation is to set organization in motion by seeing as clearly as I can, not what this book should be, but what it is. By naming, we cultivate in a way that respects the character and qualities of the thing cultivated. Motivation hunting, all day long. When I find it, it doesn't last long. My body only holds a day of muse song. In a dewy green glade, where stillness pervades, I'm rooted and fueled by the wet ground, a sustainable sound. Chapter 14 out of 100, complete from the start. When Zeus's head was pregnant with his daughter Athena, she sprang right out of his head, fully formed. In my own invented mythology, this teaches me that a work of art can pop right out of my head in the same way. Things don't have to be constructed. They can also arrive complete. Which is better? A masterpiece that you sleep painted and woke up to complete? Or a nice work crafted over decades by your heroic, committed labor? in a mythical guitar solo duel. They say B.B. King beat Stevie Ray Vaughan by holding a single note. The crows hold their wings, just so, when they glide. Wing and wind dissolve their separation. Words without the jigsaw lines between. One day, an enterprising individual invented page numbers, lowercase letters, spaces. Something was gained, something was lost. One day, an enterprising individual invented goodness, yin and yang, images as placeholders, to seem rather than to be. Something was gained, something was lost. Somehow the sum of two things is always less than one. We split to gain something, yet a bond spills away. Whatever that bond is, it cannot be replaced with anything other than itself, rediscovered when two become one again. I grew like housing additions, all tacked on patchwork. I grow like water, purified by pressing through the earth. Faith chapter, irrational. Faith is the gateway to finding your thing, to leave off with contingencies and preparation, to live your life. Only in the immediate moment, where preparation is impossible, can you start your romance with reality. The farmer crept out under the night sky, his bag of strange glowing seeds in hand. He took awkward steps through the obscurity, pressing on by the light of strewn seed, which illumined yellow or orange, or perhaps green. The cast light from the bag dilated his pupils, so the diminutive rays from the earth looked hazy and dreamlike. Beyond the tilled field, he tested his steps, following each glowing seed the way a baby tentatively walks. And before long, he was in the woods. The accidental scholar. One day, Blake accidentally said a word that made his disobedient cat, Farty, come to him. It happened liminally. He was paying attention to Farty just so. He watched Farty on the island, eating a Cheerio, and he said, "Farty." Farty looked just as surprised as Blake as he hopped off the island and trotted over. Blake sat silently in his lazy bro for 15 minutes, petting Farty. Then, resolutely, he picked up the phone, called his boss, and quit his job at Shoney's. He had a new job now. He was going to pioneer a science of words of power. His first instinct was categorical. He noted every component of speech which, when understood intimately, would lend their power to the complex matrix of a spoken word. Pitch, timbre, chord, syllable, meaning, stress, and his X factor, the liminal, almost unconscious attention which was the seedbed for his first word of power. His house overflew with tomes from every field adjacent to speech. Sociology was necessary, and music theory, and etymology, and performance. Even YouTube seduction bros joined the ranks of his mentors. With no physical mentor in his life, There's nobody to tell him what a naive, stupid, uninformed idea this was. So, unchoked by criticism, his idea slowly realized. He found clues to his puzzle everywhere. From Qigong, he learned that the sound hung made his belly vibrate. From Dale Carnegie, he learned the power in saying a person's name. From Emerson, he learned that every word started from some aspect of nature, abstracted. From painting, he learned that colors existed in a context and were in no way absolute. From alchemy, he learned the power of the ankh and the cross. After a decade, he realized that puzzling together his puzzle wasn't getting anywhere. He needed a practice to reconcile his studies. So he started conversing with inanimate objects, like St. Francis. By 2 decades, he'd made scant progress. He could say glom to turn a light on, but not off. In perhaps a year, he could make a light breeze during springtime. Blodé, perhaps? At this point, he was getting older. There was a new problem: how to record and communicate his knowledge. It seemed like fixing problems was all he did anymore. The work left no space for his love of names, philonymy. One evening, around the 3rd decade, he sat silently in his ergo bro with Farty Jr. on his lap. After 15 minutes, he picked up the phone and joined the bocce club at the local park. He practiced bocce and philonymy till his dying day. Both flourished when he rediscovered an ordinary life. After a decade, he knew how to think a word which would give another man courage, and he could cook a hot pocket in his hands. He was also great at bocce. He never cataloged his work, but he said to a bocce friend one day that philonymy, bocce, and friendship were really very similar. Your own personal barriers stand in the way of what is obvious. To see a thing, truly, was to know its name. We had a scrivener in the department, Watts, and he was a total bizarro Sherlock Holmes. It was the freakiest thing. The detectives would bring in a case, and the scrivener would name the culprit. We figured it out on Donut Tuesday. We were all sitting around talking about the Bronx waifu detonator, and he, overhearing, just stated with absolute authority that it was Roger Pimple, like he was Jesus or something. We laughed it off, but 6 months later, when we booked Pimple, someone remembered that Watts said it months ago. Watts was completely uninterested in explaining his line of reasoning. He didn't seem to operate on logic. It was like he could look into the whole soup of data and just dumbly declare before logic interfered. At first, we took to his insights with a religious devotion. It was a judicial dream come true. But then we followed one of his proclamations from on high, booked the guy, tortured him for months with bureaucracy, and it turned out he was innocent. We were all a little shook. It was a come-to-Jesus kind of moment. We couldn't just take the scrivener's insights as gospel. Somebody tallied it up once, and Watts had like a 51% rate of accuracy. Barely better than a coin flip. But it was definitely something. Total voodoo juju. Watts was never really interested in work as a scrivener, and after a few years he left to do retraining and start another career. I think he ended up as a dancer. Your head can't produce wisdom. It has to come from your balls. Since childhood, when I spoke wisdom, my love, I knew that I was just parroting words I didn't understand, something way above my pay grade. No matter how wise I get, it will always feel like this. How couldn't it? Every word I speak is 10,000 leagues deep. Words are meaning, turned symbolic. How could you measure a bottomless ocean? In wisdom, I can reconstruct the entire Bible from a blade of grass. Or Sam Harris's fish recipe. Chapter 16. Delicate. There's wild magic in my stream of consciousness. But as soon as I corral my ideas too roughly, the magic totally disappears. Something about intention dries up the magic, like how picking a green plant cuts it off from the goo that keeps it green. When my writing becomes about the ideas greedily slurp up the juice of life, and all I'm left with is hay. I can sculpt the hay into something quite impressive, but it's not alive anymore. 2 ways to cultivate a garden. Since time immemorial, 2 neighbors always end up right next to each other, guided by fate. The neighbor who carefully crafts a beautiful HOA-friendly lawn, and the lazy neighbor who does not care about all the native weeds and their military campaign against everyone's grass. The conscientious neighbor devotes his energy to the common good, to grace his neighborhood with civilization, order, and resale value. The thoughtless neighbor devotes his energy to... what does he do for a living again? Well, whatever it is, he is not interested in joining the neighborhood war against evil weeds. So, the HOA sends him a draft card in the form of fines. Fight the good fight, soldier. Yellow waving wonder. Is there anything more beautiful than a field of dandelions? My HOA is full of hypocrites. There are 2 ways to cultivate a garden, with intentionality or with naturalness. My book is a garden, and I can either decide what the book is going to be about, then write into that, culling the vagabond weeds that stray from the plan, or I can watch the native citizens of my writing sprout up and cultivate a space that emphasizes their own unique beauty and the harmony of the ecosystem as a whole. Real Eden was always tending to wild. Nobody was reining anything in. Wildness made its own cultivation, as lungs transmute oxygen into carbon dioxide. We think our creative work is all about curbing and steering and cutting and molding and negotiating and compromising. But the truth is, the origin of our creativity is the primitive wildness. Your creative power doesn't have to do with your toil, but with your openness to the creative source. The refinement of your work will take care of itself. It's built into what you are. Your toil doesn't add anything to the equation but a headache. We almost all believe that our power is in the grinding of ourselves into a sharp sword, which is why we rise and grind every day like good post-Protestants. The real sword we aspire to, but don't realize, is an undistracted mind. That's where the power is. But instead, we go the opposite way and toil ourselves out of a relationship with ourselves, like a husband who works and sleeps at the office for his wife. The Spark Chapter. We all know the story of how childhood magic turns into adult sophistication. One interpretation: the naivety and anarchy of childhood is not suitable for the adult world. As we grow up, we must take our part in a world that requires stability, expectations, commitment, and certainty. An unsettled, wild spirit can't thrive here. Can't hold a job, sustain a relationship, raise a child, harmonize with a community. So, the spark is lost. The world rubs it out through pressure. Rarely is the spark maintained past college. If it is, the person often has trouble finding their place in the world. For some people, the spark is transmuted into other energies: entrepreneurship, leadership, creativity. Here, perhaps it dies a slower death. It feeds off its own energy to hold the tide against bills, relationship disputes, unexpected infirmities, and deaths. And yet, we can see the spark we used to have when we look out the window. Dumb wildlife and nature are gushing with it. Is this why we rush off to nature? To at least stand near the magic we had when we were young? Peter Pan didn't want to grow up. Neverland was just a better place. None of the bullshit of normal life was allowed. We, especially men, are surprised at some point in our lives when our childhood protections drop off and the weight of real life starts to smush. Bills, unrequited love, the pressures of success, these all bear down on us, bearing the name responsibility. And the weight usually crowds out the spirit that made our life meaningful when we were still young and free from responsibility. Life used to come easily. It used to be wonderful before all this miasma started crowding in. Was our childhood happiness just Neverland? Utopia? Which means no actual place that could ever exist in the real world? I want something else to get me through this semi-charmed kind of life, baby, baby. They will take you where you do not want to go, Jesus said to Peter. The way most men react to this bad news is 1. Acceptance with reservation, and hustle. We accept that life sucks. It's a bullshit game, and we devote our time to playing the game we think evolution has thrust upon us. Get money, and buy for ourselves a wall that holds off responsibility as much as possible, time and leisure. So we can go on approximating the life we had as kids, enjoying a world without the downward weight of real life's gravity. 2. Living in an imaginary world that still contains the spark. In our powerful imagination, which engendered so many beautiful ideals when we were young, we construct a hidden world, a sacred place. We imagine up the perfect place for our dead spark. A place where, if only it was real, our spark would thrive and make so much beauty. We escape to this heaven during as many hours of as many days as possible. We pour our money into supporting more imagination, building a secret hideout with a sign up top that says, "No bullshit allowed." 3. Resentment. We play this whole game hating the earth for being so unjust, being such an obstacle to our great ideals. Nobody makes a better natural object of our resentment than our wives, who personify the demands of real life. Like Wendy, who wants Peter Pan to grow up, perhaps we see our wives as overloading every moment of our lives with chores, burdens, meaningless tasks, responsibilities. They are nature's main dispenser of gravity in our lives. Many men resent their wives for this reason. We feel like an alien intruder on an unwelcoming planet. The Earth is not a suitable place for our spark's survival, much less its thriving, we think. In the course of time, Cain brought an offering to Adonai from the produce of the soil. And Hevel too brought from the firstborn of his sheep, including their fat. Adonai accepted Hevel and his offering, but did not accept Cain and his offering. Cain was very angry, and his face fell. Adonai said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why so downcast? If you are doing what is good, shouldn't you hold your head high? And if you don't do what is good, sin is crouching at the door. It wants you, but you can rule over it." The women in our lives, on the other hand, like Wendy, hope that we will welcome reality, the only place there actually is to live, and grow strong enough to live our ideals under its weight. What if nature herself was hoping the same thing? Gravity pulls. Oppressively? Perhaps. But it's not unnatural to have this anchor on you all the time. This burden, this is your bond to the earth. You receive nature's strength by these means. So, in fact, when you stand on the heavy earth, carrying gravity's weight, you are connected to the earth. Your connection is like a plant's root. The more you carry, the deeper it reaches down into the soil. The earth gives the plant her strength, her virtue, through that root. Experiencing lots of pressure moments gives you a lot of opportunities to let go. If somehow you make a practice out of letting go of your resistance to feeling, you are also making a practice of courage. Once you let go, the pressure alchemizes into your own personal strength. No building up or preparing is necessary. You do not grow strong in order to withstand pressure. Accepting pressure is what makes you strong. Arnold Schwarzenegger on bodybuilding. If you can't get through this pain barrier, you won't be a champion. And that's what most people lack, is in this, having the guts. The guts to go in and say, I'll go through, and I don't care what happens. It doesn't matter, because it's all worth it. I am a sensitive soul, but not like a rock transfigured to dough. Under the hot sun, I don't flatten and mold. But like a tree, under the prickles of the sun, I sense with my leaves and harmonize with the scene. I thrive as I can by feeling my way through all nature gives me. It's not to say if my world today is snot, my day is forfeit. Shades of green are made ugly by how I designate it. Why should I hunker down and wait to write or live? Because I have a soul cramp or heart indigestion. One thing I've learned about professional football players, there's not a game they play where they aren't playing through some kind of injury. Something's always sore or tight or sketchy. This is the nature of things. So if I wait for some ideal circumstances to come where I can finally start living for real, well, I'm waiting for a fantasy. This is just like looking to the paleo diet to save me from my food anxiety, or looking to the second coming of Jesus to annihilate the things I can't live with in this world. If I ever want to move past my frozen fantasies and start my life, step one is this. I must accept this is how it is. It's in how it is that I repair my marriage. It's in how it is that I build edifying friendships with real, boring people. How it is, in all its banality, is limitless in its potential for magic. When I never escape the comfortable solidity of my own empty fantasies, I'll never even crack open my first magic book and start conjuring wonders. A fragment of Kai drifted down through the layers of reality, like a weightless diamond feather. Deep down in a boy's dream, stable at the 5th level of sleep, the hero fought with aliens at an abandoned gas station in rural Bizarro Pelzer. Leaping through the air and shooting Kamehameha lasers out of his hands, the boy seemed to be doing pretty well for himself against the aliens. Adjacent to the gas station was a forgotten field, only a background to the boy's subjective interest. In the field, in a weathered Duck Martin boot, lived a little grass sprite. According to the dream, he had lived there his whole life, and today was a day as any other, except for the clangs of battle outside his shoe. He shook the sleep out of his head and peeked out of the shoe to see what all the commotion was about, rubbing his electric green-yellow face. Bombs and plasma rifles were foreign in these here parts. As he watched the pomp and circumstance of a 10-year-old boy's fantasy, the feather Kai fell through the onion layers of reality and landed softly in the unmowed grass next to him. What a strange day! This diamond feather was even more interesting than the solar system war taking place at the Citgo and A&W Root Beer building. The sprite hopped out of his boot, leaned over the diamond, and sniffed. And the feather snuffed right into the sprite's nose and into his belly. The sprite, let's call him Gel, bent over, hacking and sputtering at this alien invader of his nasal cavity. But rather than dislodging, the diamond feather fell apart like dry mist and dispersed through Gel's entire body. The first thing that happened was Gel gained about 100 pounds. His bare feet felt the weight of the sand under him as resistance for the first time. And along with the new feeling of gravity tugging him, his body somehow thickened. A whole mass of somethings began to dance in him, like wiggling fish, electric currents, and all kinds of tugs. Then, Gel suddenly grew 5 feet and formed skin. Immediately, he felt the burn of the sun for the first time, and a whole new set of dances set off within him. He looked around his dreamland field, the dreamland sky, the dreamland gas station, and for the first time, he noticed how shifty it all was. Nothing seemed to stay in the same place, and it was all so insubstantial. He looked down at his own hands, and somehow they seemed more real than anything in his world. On a whim, he began to spin and spin. The dream world around him bled into a dizzying wash of green and blue, and all of a sudden, he blonked out of the boy's dream. Where he went and what happened to him is... Chapter 18. Not Sacred. It's all too easy for me to frustrate over all these obstacles to my creative life, all these stupid, unpoetical responsibilities. I forget what I knew a long time ago, that my life itself is my creative art, that my writing is in no way different from my driving to pick up my child from daycare, not even a bit different. The confusion is because I've trained myself to see my creativity as work. I'm still under the illusion that my effort and toil is the source of this important labor I'm devoted to, of building this grandiose sandcastle with my intellect. Do you believe there is more to life than your art? When the creativity is taken care of effortlessly, as a byproduct of you just living, then what might that make space for you to see again? Is there anything else? I think here, past our aims and targets, is the thing that really matters. How do you talk about it? It's something like dancing or morality. When our art is no longer an obsession which needs to be protected from the time-sucking ravages of our circumstances, we can start to not care about it so much. And in that carelessness, our relationship to art becomes well again. Is taking time to shave getting in the way of me becoming the next C.S. Lewis? Maybe time with my daughter and family is too. And all that time I waste eating. Mastery as an aspiration can make you do some really weird things. It ruthlessly targets and strips away normal living as a distraction from your important work. Hanging out with your wife is what muggles do. I'm busy learning magic, baby. And so your path to this wonderful thing, which has started to close your view into a toilet paper tube, transforms your life into something thin, venereal. Your real life becomes this uninteresting, thin thing, which you parcel out only the absolutely necessary attention. And you feed your life force into this object of your imaginative obsession, your important project. My precious. The ball boy at Gold Toe Gym. Every gym needs its own unique selling point. Some have pools, some have towel service. At Gold Toe Gym, they hired Benny, a weights boy, to re-rack all your weights and dumbbells when you were finished using them. It was a huge success. Now, rather than burning calories and time squatting down with your 45s, Benny would take care of it. This set off an avalanche of exertion innovation. Before long, Benny was also handling the up portion of every lift, so the gym goers could lift more by just doing the down part. The average bicep increased by 0.75 centimeters. The average glute by 4 deciliters. Gym-goers could now focus on what they came to the gym to do, their routine. While you were getting strong, Benny would make sure you didn't waste your strength. Before long, it was time for the 2035 Inter-Gym Weightlifting Competition, sponsored by Pho King, Greenville's averagest Vietnamese restaurant. And the Big Five gym rats of Gold Toe Gym had assembled to kick ass. Benny tagged along too, to relocate their weights. But in the parking lot, the Big Five ran into trouble. Samurai Mike had driven with his wallet in his butt pocket, sitting on it during the drive had thrown his cremtoid completely out of whack. The fridge had bent over to tie his weightlifting shoes and couldn't get back up. Sweetness lifted his toddler out of the car seat, and now his arms were stuck in the up position. The sack man could push up better than anyone, but he couldn't push down his brake pedal and kept on driving to North Carolina till he ran out of gas. And Jimbo's pinky finger was inexplicably pointing the wrong way. "Benny, we're in a lick of trouble," said Samurai Mike. "There's nobody at Gold Toe to compete except you, but you don't even lift weights." Then, Samurai Mike and the rest of the crew realized a realization. Benny lifts more than any of us. So, they enrolled Benny to represent Gold Toe Jim in the big liftoff. It turns out Benny was pretty mediocre in every category. Silver Chunk Jim, on the other hand, showed off their stunning new innovation. Disneyland-style lightning lanes at the gym. Pay $5 and get your turn on the equipment some schlub is using in your place. Their weights boy would just shove them off. The rumor was this had increased their average neck girth by 2 Starbucks points. No medals for Gold Toe this year, but Benny had a wonderful time wearing the Gold Toe colors, black with a little gold tip, and he went back to work injury-free. So, I ask, why keep turning down lunch dates with friends so you can focus some more on your precious mastery? What if you could have it all? What if you had a social life and then came home and barfed out masterpieces in the time you had? I know this is foolish. I'm just saying, what if? What if you could have it all? You say, obviously you can't. My creativity will quickly be gobbled up by responsibility if I don't protect this sacred block of time and fight against these bloody responsibilities, the enemy of my life's purpose and work. If I just shit out this book on the iPhone when I have time, could it somehow end up better than if I corralled my hours, corralled my thoughts, subjected them to a great subject I had in mind for this wonderful, important work? I didn't take notes on half the great ideas I had last week for this book, because they came during hours when I knew in my balls it wasn't time to ideate further. Why cramp that muscle when there was a TV show to watch, a toddler's Lego set to Lego sit, an email to send? Those wonderful ideas are gone forever. I can't remember them anymore. My book won't suffer for being written when it's time to write and not being written when it's not time to write. And my responsibilities are no obstacle to this book becoming perfect. The sprout that sprouts out of this soil is health. We tend to ride our obsession. We use it as our edge to achieve art mastery. It's like we're burning up our own health as our gasoline. But our health is limited. This ocean of creativity in our belly is limitless. When I'm camping, I don't cook ramen over a pile of incense sticks. Plain old wood is best. 19. Charisma. Charisma is that little quirk of magic that God sends downriver, just for us. The gift's potency expresses in proportion to how much the river can flow. We call these talents, but they are not properly indebted to our cleverness or effort. Talents. Under the blue sky, One man received 5 hours of free time each day. One received 2, and another 1. And they were free to spend their time. The man with 1 hour dispensed it liberally. He charismaed it to whatever person, place, or experience happened. The man with 2 hours spent it intentionally. The world wonder spoke to him. He was full till he thought he'd pop. He replied to the world wonder with art. The man with 5 hours guarded his time. He used it to shore up his depleting happiness, strength, health, financial stability, life, time, under the blue sky. Charisma disappeared from the church when doctrine became a kink. The early Christian church was a circus of charisma. Anyone could take the podium. We spoke in angelic languages over the dinner table, and then the tanner next door would invent a new section of the Bible right out of his soul. We tried to keep it civil, but things got complicated. There was a lot of energy bouncing around. After 200 years, as things got real big, we dumped all the energy into an energy sink. Tradition. Nothing burned anymore, but there was a nice manageable glow to the talisman, and you could wear it around your neck, or buy and sell it. The weird magical spontaneity gave way to certainty and stability, like it does until the next prophet appears. Intentions press hard on the well of magic. When you need to use the magic for something really specific, like blotting away uncertainty or discomfort or drama, the well of magic shuts. It's certainly much easier that way. It's like Milton's Garden of Eden. These begonias are growing faster than Adam and Eve can prune them. The pragmatic recourse is to shut things down. There's no free lunch. The huge well of energy is impossible to control. It causes all kinds of logistical problems. So, is there a place for magic still? Is there any way for it, with all its crazy potential, to not overrun the garden? Can we tap into the well again and be responsible? There are no easy answers, but obviously the Apostle Paul thought so, and Tertullian too. In Burnout, I was parched for the well. I was like dry Play-Doh. Our burnout society tamed away the weird magic of life. We don't have demons anymore, or gods. But because they come from the same source of energy as us, we live off a drip feed of life in this materialistic world. This burnout life will just become more of a caricature of itself, till we are fed up and feed on magic again. For the first time since my 20s, I feel the summer breeze as I leave the gym. I feel the tightness in my upper back spine, 20 years my companion. Of course these birds call to each other in the parking lot trees. That's their job on summer days like these. As I haltingly experience the childhood spark again, what I lost when life sophisticated it away, I realize it's simply vulnerability. You open enough to get hurt again, and there is all the magic. It never went anywhere. You shielded up. We are embarrassed to be accused of being afraid of the dark, so we populate our world with artificial lights. The antepenultimate chapter, Freedom. The Zen wanderers, the Taoist hermits, were disconnected from the everyday goings-on that everyone goes on with every day. Everyone's clocking in at 8, raising kids, watching sitcoms, except the monks, watching it all happening. They must have felt like a kid taking a sick day, or a small-time entrepreneur, in that they have fallen through the cracks of society. 101 degree and fevered, you look out the window, and all the kids are getting on the bus to go to school, but you're not. The world of adults is going off to work, just as they do every day, but you stand outside it. You spend your day in a liminal world of weird soap opera TV shows you only sort of knew existed, and Revenge of the Nerds replaying on Comedy Central, just to fill the time when nobody is watching TV except you. Maybe you walk the neighborhood, or ride your bike to the pool, and it's like a ghost town. Even where there's activity, it's like it's somehow not your activity. You're kind of watching it from outside. Freedom, but also a kind of disconnection. You're disconnected from a story. It's maybe the first time you have a chance to wonder if there's a deeper connection to the world that doesn't have to do with the shit we do all day when we're not sick. I am not I am not disconnected from the community of s who are ing. We are all. I hope that whatever this book is, that the narrative and all the accidents fall into irrelevance beneath something still and all-encompassing. The final form of this book is just me schlepping and adorning my experience with this deep inspiration. I'm grateful to have my spark back after 15 long years. I prayed to God and told him of my love, rather than commune. I prayed to my body, promised it wholeness, rather than reincorporate the mind. I prayed to this lightning-cut sky and said to everyone, "How beautiful," rather than let its jagged drumming dance overtake me entire. Finally, the baby is asleep. Midnight rain sounds. She runs her hand along my arm. The penultimate chapter, Virtue. The Rook Shop. In every town, there is the same building, with the same man behind the register and the same merchandise. You can find the Rook Shop tucked away in the most forgotten strip mall, between payday loan sharks and dead vape shops, and all kinds of obvious fronts that decent and indecent people alike give a wide berth. You can find the Rook Shop when you want to. It's a store of convenience or necessity. People come there for the things that they desire but cannot bring out of themselves: confidence, power, love, and wealth. At the Rook Shop, you can trade for them and walk out the door with what you've always needed to start the life of your dreams. These blood-red beads are the bones of a monk who meditated for 40 years. This wedding ring on a chain has the dried heart dust of a woman blissfully wedded all her life. You can carry their virtue in your hand. Second-hand virtue. Of course, the Rook Shop doesn't take money. What you exchange is one of your own virtues, which is imbued into a cut-off digit of your pinky finger. So, for the drive to stick to your goals, perhaps you will exchange your love of sunsets. Were you honestly using it that much anyway? The Rook Shop has made countless millionaires, charismatists, celebrated lovers. Just remember, you have a month to trade back for your previous virtue, or it's gone for good. Trading back is a funny thing. To trade back, you need to bring in a stolen good. Not from a store or something that you took from an enemy or a stranger. It needs to be something you took from an innocent person who trusts you. Spouses and children are perfect. You should know by now the proprietor can tell if your item is genuine. Trade the item, and you're right back to where you started. All your virtues intact, even your finger. It's like a 1-month trial period of the life you've always wanted, plus tax. For the avid collector of virtues, the proprietor is happy to enter into a long-term business relationship. Scouts bring in potential customers for a finder's fee. 15,000 points gets you a virtue of your choice. Gravediggers, it's just a name, don't worry, seek out items of virtue for the aforementioned finder's fee. There are some real powerful people working for the proprietor. You could call them highly bedecked with virtue. The real juice of life is so elusive. Why is it so hard to come by? The Rook Shop gives second-hand virtue to desperate modern people hungry to live. Polychromus the 13th, the weak white mage. According to Polychromus, there was a subtile source of magic, which was not only powerful, but morally virtuous. Other mages of the third cycle viewed magic as morally neutral. Virtue was a quality the mage brought to bear to turn magic white or black. White mages were constantly extolling their charges to do good. They cultivated the white magic by making themselves an unsuitable home for black magic. Black mages generally did away with this pretension and accepted the neutrality of magic. Polychromus embittered the whole magic community by calling them energy vampires. He claimed that 1 in 1,000 mages had an inclination to sense a certain weak moral force within magic, akin to gravity. He said that magic was a coin that landed on heads 51 times out of 100. To practitioners of power, a weak energy like this was entirely uninteresting. Even to the moral cultivators, this theoretical magnetism was not nearly as effective for doing good as virtuous intention. So Polychromus was snubbed. His writings were denied dissemination by the magic publishing agents, and he was not invited to the annual Christmas parties. Polychromus, undeterred, wrote on invisibly. He called this line the greatest thing he had ever written. Goodness is the weakest force in the world. And yet, if you are fortunate to be somehow pulled by its gravity and attuned to its shape, this goodness will compound itself, and there is no upper limit to its power. Nothing else is like this. Despite Polychromus's praise of goodness in his greatest line, he was infamous for railing against goodness, calling it an evil trap, which turned all good men monstrous in the end. Polychromus was consumed with a pattern. How the most aspirationally good mages eventually twisted as a result of their monstrous intention for goodness. Inevitably, to him, what they achieved was not goodness, but aspirational goodness, whose shape would eclipse from their view a secret evil, the exact inverse shape of their aspirational goodness. This evil, Polychromus said, the aspirationally good mage would unknowingly nurture and project. And so, the more they conformed to a self-styled image of goodness, the more sinister and evil they would secretly cultivate by their insensitivity. Unfortunately for Polychromus, he was branded an atheist and burned at the stake for his animosity towards the good. Words like passive carry a tone of bad because we're so hung up on being good. And so they become a kind of fence. I cannot get at any of the virtues behind the word passive because I can't accept passivity in myself. This is like the Pharisees' fence laws in Jesus' day. To make sure you never go against the law, you build additional laws around the law like a fence, so there isn't a chance for you to go wrong. Want to keep the Sabbath holy, but all these schmoes keep working? No problem. Let's idiot-proof this thing and say, you can't carry stuff on the Sabbath. It's a type of fervent devotion to the good. But that means anything that connotes bad is filtered out of our experience. Make no mistake, an obsession with not being bad will make your life a weird, thin husk. When we cannot accept things as they are, we curate away everything we hate by naming it bad. This hatred turns our life into a cartoon, stripped of all its dimensions and blood. It is an imaginary heaven. So, there is something of a spiritual key to embracing these bad words and embodying the virtues behind them. Beyond passive is the virtue of being affected and changed, of experience. Beyond lazy is the virtue of seeing the value of life as more than progress, etc. This is the message in spiritual sayings like, "Let no one deceive himself. If anyone among you thinks that he is wise in this age, let him become a fool, that he may become wise." There is a half wisdom in this world. There's a half good. In name and in reason, they are whole. And yet, there is something terribly wrong with them. You can begin to see their sickness in the hatred they show for their opposite. Real good does not need to try to be itself. It is unconscious of any need to persist as an idea. God, thank you for this good soil, this sun, this space. I tend to feel guilty for the privilege of my place, or just take for granted when I thrive in a state. Let me honor, like a flower does, this springtime grace. The ultimate chapter, Fool. Chapter 5. Publish Imperfection. I've sat here quietly and let my brush fly. Suddenly this volume is full. She woo. Do you love me enough to let me go? Switchfoot. Beep beep goes the timer. 5 minutes left, then pencils down. I've said my piece. In the final 5 minutes of painting, you touch up any egregious mistakes, and you slap highlights and a signature on that bad boy. Painting has this cool movement. It's called daily painting. Every day, you finish a painting. Take it from beginning to end. Then the next day you do it again. And the next day, and the next day. No single painting is precious. You don't get hung up. No tiny little brushstrokes. No spending 3 months getting my grandson's smile just right. Fuck my grandson's smile. I gotta keep painting. As in all things, there are costs and benefits. You can't necessarily make a large painting in a day. You can't make a minutely detailed painting in a day. You can't make all the necessary corrections in a day. But what you get in that trade-off is a practice of making finished paintings. And as with any practice, this means over time, you get good at making finished paintings. You get good at the two hardest parts of art, starting things and stopping things. This sounds an awful lot like a practice of letting your fire hose spray, unkinked. One thing I learned from painting is if you want your painting to be as unremarkable as a saltine cracker, paint slowly, carefully, deliberately. Don't forget to hesitate and waver. If you're the type that likes energetic paintings, you keep it loose. As few brush strokes as possible. Not applied slowly, but with confidence. Slapdash even. It's hard to treat words unimportantly. And so our writing is vapid and airy, like a pale Victorian boy with consumption. An unassuming book lacks confidence in its identity. One more time from the YouTube prophet Miss Rachel. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's wonderful because you made it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes. You know what gave me burnout in the first place? Being hopelessly unable to let go. I couldn't start. I couldn't finish. Preoccupied with not dying, I couldn't live. When you get down to it, confidence isn't bravery or idiocy. It's just faith. Faith makes all the things trying to kill you an irrelevance. There are 10,000 dumb ways to die, and one of them has my number. In the meantime, watch me live. Afterword. Lazy. I still start my coffee shop morning lazy. Lazy is my practice, the source of this boundless flow of creative life, the foundation for an artistic expression with real juice in it. Why burn myself out with effort that accomplishes nothing? What feels right to do this morning? If importance is looming too large, I let go of the drive. How can I start things off useless, which is the right frame for me to experience something meaningful? Maybe there is a useless poem or haiku inside me. Maybe this useless, compelling book in my backpack. Maybe a painting on my iPad. Some trifle. These may become the seeds for my next books. Or perhaps just some quality time with this real, beautiful world I'm in. Some trifle. I find the slower things go, the more my life fills with an unspeakable richness. Speed just blasts away the curling incense. It makes the connection impossible, like a judging parent trying to get close to a sensitive child and wondering why the child won't open up. What's wrong with my snowflake of a son? Life is a relationship of courtesy. Connection comes by listening. Like St. Paul suggests to spouses, each of you should submit, one to another. This courtesy is exceedingly rare, but in life, it is an absolute requirement for romancing the real world. My driving intentions totally get in the way. Stillness makes a way. I hope I am blessed with a useless day today, where nature may show me her green heart. Afterward. My next pre-book. Listen up. Don't listen to me. Authority. Now that I'm an author, I will speak with authority on the subject of authority. Who gave me the authority to write how to write this book? Well, you've been here from the start. You know how I became an author. I just did it. No permission, no education, no credential collecting. Most of us view authority as something that must be earned. Get through the red tape, put in the years, earn the respect, and you may speak. But the secret is these qualifications are all pretend. Authority is just a description. Authoring. Authoring is not a thing that can be given or taken. It is simply the action of our own will. Who am I to write a book, to paint a painting, to teach somebody else, to share my thoughts? That's for the experts. Here are some things that have literally no bearing on my ability to author or not author. Expertise, qualifications, awards won, Amazon 5-star reviews. Tell me, who reviews the reviewer? Recommendations from the current Oprah. Numbers sold. These credentials of authoring, when they stop our paintbrush or pen, have masked the truth. The granting of badges and tokens, physical and social and psychological, is the work of analysts, not authors. The praise and criticism and titles are all just vaporous words. But your practice is a red-hot, real sword. Leave it to others to name or declaim you an authority. The authority has already put its boots on the ground if your pen is on the paper. Analysts have nothing to do with your own sovereign authoring. Your art is a personal relationship with your own divine soul and its natural fecundity. An authority is someone who causes things to grow. Let it spray. You find through authoring that what you create has some dose of originality. This originality carries the authenticity that readers recognize as authoritative. It's a law of nature. When you are original, the truth bursts through your fingers onto our humble earth. This is all the authority you'll ever need. This is the only authority worth anything. I can't give you permission to write or paint or undertake your thing. This is something that can't be traded like knowledge. It's necessary that you recognize all by yourself that nobody is standing in your way. Most of us spend our time managing our influences, negotiating with them so they will motivate us towards what we call freedom. We don't recognize that freedom is already here, standing right outside all these influences we mistakenly think have any impact on our potential at all. So long, space cowboys. Thank you for listening to How to Write This Book by Kyle Heath. If you enjoyed this and you want an altogether different wacky experience, you can buy the book version of How to Write This Book. The link is available down in the description. Also, if you want another way to support me doing this kind of stuff, I have a Patreon account, and you can patronize me on Patreon by visiting a link that is also down in the description. Thank you for listening. Peace.